What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Season Gaming Bitcast, episode 199. We are one episode away from our 200 spectacular, which we'll detail a little more at the end of the show. But I am your host, Ainsley Bowden, joined by a weird mix of a cast today, but we'll explain. Yeah, I mean, I don't know who this guy at the bottom is, but on my right, as usual, the dapper-looking Thai guy Travis, who looks a little more awake this week, I may say.
McClunky. Yeah, I am awake. I was playing a new game that I'm reviewing before the show. So
okay, all right.
To talk about that today.
Okay, all right. Yeah, well, we've got some games to talk about that you've been reviewing that I've heard about. Also, let's see. So a couple things. Rick Hogue, as you know him, will be joining us in a little bit. He's running a little late today. He had some Easter stuff going on, so he'll be joining us shortly. And Dan is actually traveling. He's in New York City at the moment with his family. So in place of Dan, we have brought on this random dude off the street. You might know him. I think he hosts some Xbox show. I don't know what's going on. He went viral this week.
It did.
Mr. Luke Lohr, host of the Xbox Expansion Pass. You know him well. Good morning, man.
Morning, man. Thank you for having me on. It is always one of my joys when I get to be on Bitcast. No joke, no exaggeration, no silliness. I love this show, and I really enjoy you guys, so it's a pleasure when I get to hang out with you.
Sweet. I apologize for this weird camera angle I'm working on. I got a new desk this week and haven't figured the camera out, so you get to look at like 4 chins during the whole show. If you're watching this on video, it's
nice.
It's a really good setup I got here. So
that's what we were all thinking.
I know. I'll figure it out for next week, but yeah, we got pretty light news week, guys. So I thought what we would do today is have kind of a broader conversation, which Elden Ring kind of brought it back a lot more over the past several weeks, which is what makes a really good open world game. So we're going to talk about that as our main topic today. Hopefully Rick will be here in time for that, of course, once we get started on that. But first, we've got a couple other things to cover, including what we've been playing. We've got some Halo to talk about, some Battle Royale kind of details that have started to leak that are coming. We'll touch on that. We've got CD Projekt Red still working on Cyberpunk, some details on that as well. So, but before we get to that, Luke, I want to talk about what happened this week with your interview, man, because
Sure.
I kind of laugh at myself a little bit as we have done offline, but you reached out to me as you always do after your interview, and we kind of talked about it. And I had so much going on that I didn't even get a chance to, put it up. I still haven't finished listening to the entire thing. I'm about 3/4 of the way through it. And funny enough, that this interview with Lauren Lanning, creator of the Oddworld series, happened to just blow up as soon as you posted it across every major site this week. So what was that like?
It was interesting. It was cool. It was just a little bit odd. I don't know. It was a strange thing because that's not happened before. And I would have thought there are other things with people that I've interviewed before that I would have thought would have taken attention. Right. But this one kind of caught fire. And on the one hand, it was really cool because it brought a ton of eyes to XEP. I got a lot of messages from people saying they just discovered the show and the interview list, which is over 70 people long now at this point. And it was really neat in a lot of ways. And the other side of it was a lot of people, some news sites, though there were quite a few that did get the context. A lot of them took things out of context, and Lohr Lanning was in no way attacking PlayStation. In fact, he took full responsibility for the way the deal went down, but his use of the word devastating was taken out of context by so many people.
Yeah.
That was kind of a bummer to feel like I had a part in that misrepresentation of his interview, but I think people that listened to it got a full idea of what he was saying. And it was odd. I think the craziest part for me was shows and websites that I really look up to. Some of them were very dismissive of me and others gave me a ton of credit. Yeah, it was very odd. I had a lot of just like, it was like people that I really like were just like, oh, this Xbox thing show, whatever. And I was like, huh, okay. But I did have a really cool interaction with one person in the games industry who had in their article, very reputable site, misquoted the name of the show. And I reached out via DMs, didn't hear back from her within 12 hours, and then emailed because open DMs can be a mess, right? And they were so apologetic, so kind and respectful and complimentary. It was just a cool feeling, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of really mixed emotions to go through it, but it was really neat, I guess, in some ways, for sure.
That's cool. That's cool.
Thanks, man.
So what Lauren was actually saying, right, is
Yeah.
that they signed the deal at a time. So listen to the interview because it's a great interview, truly. And there's a lot of context there, and it'll help you understand how some of these deals are struck if you don't have any context, especially with things like PS Plus and Game Pass, etc. But what he was actually saying is the fact that, they were at a time in development where they had to kind of essentially take the deal from a financial perspective. And on the tail end, in hindsight, they looked at it in a kind of not a negative way. They've always, as you pointed out, they've really appreciated PlayStation and kind of what PlayStation has done for them. So that's what was taken out of context. But it was just one of those things where it happened to be a time where they kind of had to do what they had to do to get the game done and keep the studio rolling. So interesting.
It was funny to think that that's what caught fire. And I think like less than a month ago, I talked to somebody that talked about the Madden review cycle or Madden development cycle and why that didn't you get it versus like the word devastating just played a huge part in people running away with a narrative. And it was just interesting to watch how it works. But I was appreciative of all the new eyes and whatnot. That was cool.
Cool.
Do you feel that outlets ran away with the narrative? Because I guess as somebody who doesn't really interact with like commenters and stuff, is that it seemed to me like the outlets presented the story correctly, right? Like he did say that it was devastating to sales. That was his sentiment. It's just that there's more context that doesn't fit in a headline that the articles also included, at least the one I read on IGN's site. And it seemed like the commenter's reaction to the headline was actually what was taking things out of context, not the articles itself.
So very good point. I think a lot of the reputable sites did a good job in their articles of giving context, because I was very sensitive to that because this is the first time it's happened to me. So I was reading a lot of the articles and whatnot. And even in like IGN's Daily Fix, they did a very good job of explaining what happened. Some of the podcasts out there did not, and that was a little strange. But the outlets, the bigger ones, did give context. It was the headline that is eye-catching, and there's an element to the industry that is important when it comes to headlines to bring eyes onto a story. And then commenters, to your point, were the ones that mostly ran away with it. There were a few, I think I would call them enthusiast sites that spun it one way or another, and that is what it is. It's a kind of a necessary part of it. But most of the, what I would say, reputable elements did a very good job at breaking down the bigger context of the article. And without PlayStation, Lohr Landing would not have finished Oddworld Soulstorm, right?
For sure.
And that is the part that I think was lost on a lot of people in multiple communities. And it was just interesting to see people change that narrative in a lot of ways. But I mean, I just have mixed emotions.
Two things can be true. He needed PlayStation, and the deal he made was devastating to sales. I think that both of those things are true, but I get why the headline was the way it was, but I also don't think that the headline that everybody was using was inaccurate. I mean, it was a quote from him.
It's technically not inaccurate. It's just it's that type of headline, right?
It's also not inaccurate to what happened, though.
No, I know, but it's obviously used in a way as
I think
to drive a certain emotion. Yeah,
I think by the commenters, though, that was just my impression, because if you read the headline, you go, "Oh, what does that mean?" And then you read the article, and you're like, "Oh, okay, I get it now." Like that makes sense.
Yeah,
just sort of, I don't know. It just, to me, it seemed like the runaway was with, as Luke said, enthusiast sites, which I also have like zero interaction with. So I probably am out of the loop there. Are you an enthusiast?
No, technically we're not an enthusiast site.
I was going to say, I thought you guys were the opposite of that. Like I think the enthusiast site and people who are, we're always going to make their own narrative no matter what the article headline was. Kind of ran away with it. But I don't know. I saw a lot of like vitriol for like headline hate, and I was like, but that headline's accurate. I don't understand what the problem is. Like that was a direct quote from the interview, and it also in context made sense. I don't know.
Yeah, I take issue with it a little bit, but I'm very sensitive to headlines like that. I struggle with writing them. Like, we'll have good news or info, right? And I will write a headline that's not as catchy, because I feel almost, I'm weird, man. I feel almost like guilty if I write something that is purposely written to sound more either egregious or, just kind of catch someone's eye. Like, oh, what's that? Like, that doesn't sit well with me a lot of the time. But I do agree with you. But
what headline would you have used for that?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it. I would have been very basic, you know, like Lohr Landing discusses, you know, how PlayStation Plus affected our world.
That's how I tend to title XEP episodes, and it does me no favors. In fact, it works against me. And
oh, I know. I'm aware.
It's one of the other elements of it is I've been working really hard at getting better at thumbnails because I'm notoriously bad at them, right? And I've been doing tutorials and using templates. And like if you look at the last 3 episodes or so, you'll see like a genuine progression. And it's really hard to create thumbnails without the big face or all bold words, bright light, you know, and yeah, like that kind of stuff. And I go through the same thing, and it is to a detriment to traffic for sure.
Yeah.
But he did say that it's the problem with people that I think that don't read the article or whatnot.
Yeah.
And
to me, that's the real problem is people that do not read articles. Like, I don't think blaming headlines is the right move. It's like blame the people that don't read the article. Like,
yeah,
me,
but
anyway.
I get stuck on that one, Travis, too, because like the headline feels misleading, and it's not, but it is, and there's an intangibility to it. And I'm stuck, I think, in between you guys in terms of like the vibe for what we would do, and you know, I don't have a better answer for how that happens. You know,
yeah,
because both can be true.
Yeah, I guess I put the onus more on like an informed public, like, you know, doing.
Well, there's your problem.
Like, well, I mean, putting your problem on putting it also on like outlets, not writing things in a way that like drive traffic also seems kind of bizarre. You know what I mean? Like either way, you're putting it on someone that's like. One that's acting against its self-interest, which is the public by not being informed, and the other one that is acting its an interest. So if I had to put the onus on one of those groups, I'd say probably, you know, if the articles are inaccurate, that's one thing. And I'm by no means defending large outlets, including IGN, for always having the headline and the content correct. I just think in this case, I was kind of surprised that I saw your guys' comments online, and I was like, I don't think that headline's inaccurate. I mean, I listened to what he said. I was like, that's what he said.
Not inaccurate. It's inflammatory.
Yeah. Inflammatory. I would just say it's a piece of what he said, but you can't include the entire, interview in the headline. So
you chose the most inflammatory piece of it.
The most interesting is another way of putting it. It's, like usually headlines we're supposed to contain the most interesting part, and that's what it was. So it's just, I don't know. I get why if you're, anti SEO, you would have a problem with it, but I don't know. If you're trying to get the news story out, which one helps more? Putting an article,
completely agree with you.
Yeah, putting an article headline that like gets people to click on it, and then people find out about that thing that was said, or just putting a headline that you think is more mild, and then nobody reading it. You know what I mean? Like if I had to choose.
Understood. Yeah. Good. By the way, I didn't say good morning to everyone in chat. What's happening, everyone?
Everyone.
Ains is being a little holier than thou with his take. I know. I fully admit it. Yeah, I know. And Gaming Forte says headlines would get people into the video article, unfortunately. Of course. Yeah, I think we all agree there.
If that's the case, go listen to the Brian Wagner. He talks all about Madden. Stephen Frost talks all about Marvel vs. Capcom 2 remake. And then I have a Shredder's interview coming up, and he talks all about Game Pass numbers and stuff like that. So yeah. Go.
Yeah, hopefully.
What are you doing right now? What is this?
I'm just being inflammatory. Interesting. Sorry. Interesting.
Hopefully the takeaway here is that you should watch Luke's entire content. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, actually listen to the show.
If you see an article and the headline makes you kind of turn your head, you should click on it and read the whole thing. I mean, shouldn't that be the takeaway of if anybody misrepresented the facts of this, is that you should watch Luke's entire interviews. Like,
I'll take it.
I see this as an absolute win for everyone, right? We all learned a lesson as a community.
Big fan of Travis right now. Big fan of Travis right now.
Let me bring you back down here.
Okay. All right.
I think we can all agree that Luke sucks. I mean,
I think we can agree that Luke sucks, but we have to watch the whole video to see how much he sucks, right?
Fair enough. All right, fellas. So, what you been playing, guys? I don't have anything new to talk about here. I've been playing a lot of Wonderlands, been playing Diablo. So let's start with you, Travis, because I know you've got a fun one that you've been dying to talk about.
Yes, so I can finally talk about a game that my review is going live tomorrow at 7 a.m. Pacific. So it'll be like 10 for you, Ains.
Nice.
It's a game called Postal 4 No Regrets. So
Wow,
this is interesting. This is interesting. I am allowed to talk about my early impressions of the game without giving. Basically, so the quote in the embargo is, "I'm allowed to give my unscored impressions, whatever that means." That's
pretty much everything but a number.
Exactly. That's pretty basically what I thought. So I could post my entire interview and just not put a number, or sorry, my entire review. And so this game is a sequel to Postal 2, which was made in like the aughts. It was during that weird period of like bizarre flash games and like really crass humor and stuff like that. And so it's kind of a callback to that. Its problem is that it is super not funny and really offensive and poorly written, and also a really bad game. Like none of it works and it crashes constantly. And it's like a nightmare to play. And so that's my unscored impressions, is that you should not play this game, and I wish that I had not. And yeah, that's really all I can say. Is I reviewed this game and it was really bad, and my review is going to be live tomorrow at 7 Pacific. So if you want to see just how bad, and include some pretty hilarious footage of me playing this terrible game, including a montage of the game crashing, which is probably my favorite part, then you should tune into IGN.com, check it out. It's terrible game. Postal 4, No Regrets.
This is a terrible trailer I'm watching too.
Yeah.
Travis, as he could share in our kind of Bitcast DM, was telling me, Rick, and Dan about this, as he was allowed, of course. It just sounds like one of those that kind of, as you just said, I guess it sounds like one of those that attempts to be funny with kind of controversial humor and just misses the mark about as far as you can possibly miss it. Yeah.
It's like trying to be South Park, except for instead of like being clever or having like some sort of point to the satire, it was just like it. I think I say in my review, it feels like it was written by like a fourth grader that just learned his 10th naughty word and he's like really proud of it. That's what it feels like. It's like really, it's embarrassing. Like you feel bad for the game developers in the game. Like that's never a good feeling. So anyway, I have not been playing that game, but I can now talk about it. I reviewed that game like 2 weeks ago. The embargo was super long for some reason. So
you need to have time to digest its message.
That's right. Yeah, apparently, man. So the game I'm reviewing now, I just finished this morning. It's called Trek to Yomi.
Oh, yes.
And it is a cool samurai game that I also can't talk about, but I've been playing that game, and my review will be up sometime in early May, I think. So
I was going to say that's real early because it doesn't release for a few weeks yet.
Yeah. It's pretty early now, so I'm reviewing it on PC, and I don't think I can talk about it, but I'm reviewing that game.
Hey, Rick's here. Give me 5 seconds while I reorganize us here into our proper Constructicon configuration here. Hold. Oh God, I forget the order now. I forget the order.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Look at Rick, dude.
Look at Rick coming in, sunglasses and all. Good morning.
Showing up late to the party with a cigarette dangling from his mouth, glasses on, leather jacket.
Transition out. It's super cool. I tell you what. We were just hunting for eggs, so I appreciate the generosity, Ains, both from you and from viewers and listeners. Had to do some Easter activities, but had a blast.
Awesome. So you're saying that you were hunting for eggs, but then had to beat it?
Oh boy,
I did.
Was that a line in Postal 4?
So you don't know.
Hey.
The Hope family hunt for Easter baskets using a series of clues, so I get to rhyme every year. It was a lot of fun. My oldest daughter loves West Side Story. I got to do some Maria and Tony rhymes. My youngest loves Avatar. I got Katara in there, waterbending. We had a great time.
Wow, is this the first Rick Hogue rap album? Is that what we're looking forward to?
Oh, well, I can't do the poses right, but I'm working on them. And then when I can get those done, there will be an album, of course. Spoken word. It's really more of a William Shatner experience.
That's awesome. Well, good morning to you. Glad family's good and you guys are having fun. Luke, as you can see, I had you specially added to our upper window today with your name and all. Look at this.
Thank you.
So taking the place this week. All right, so Rick, we're actually just talking about what we're currently playing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I was talking about Trek to Yomi. You have any interest in that game? Do you know what that game is?
I've seen the trailers. Seems very fashionable, very stylistic. That can go one of two ways for me. Could be cool. Could be trying to leverage its fashionability. So I'm interested though. I want to check it out.
That's my next review. So
okay.
I just finished it this morning. I can't really talk about it, but it's a cool game.
You're not allowed to talk about it. So you can't tell me one way or the other which direction that goes.
I don't think
right.
so. I can say I'm reviewing it.
And leave bad comments with one of my alt accounts.
Nice. So excited for that.
I'm already kind of tired of promoting Luke this morning because it's just exhausting. You know what I mean? But he did interview the Trek to Yomi creator a few weeks ago, Leonard Menciari, I believe it's pronounced. And not only can you find that on XCP, but you can find the written interview he did at 4 Season Gaming. So that is on our site, which you can check out as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Just on Season Gaming. Just on Season Gaming.
Oh, that's right. It was written only. I'm sorry. Yeah, written only. So it's on we got an exclusive. Hey,
you get another one in a week or so.
Yeah. So Luke's, so you can find that, check it out, learn more about the game. It comes out, I think, first or second week of May, Travis, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, my embargo, I think, is May 1st. So it must come out somewhere near there.
It's real soon because you can pre-download it right now and it's got like a little timer.
Cool. Soonish, 13 days. Cool. It's kind of far away, actually.
Okay. Yeah, that's early. That's good. They got it to you so early, though. So cool. Luke, what have you been playing, man? Anything good?
Yeah, I've been pouring my life post Elden Ring into the Skywalker saga and having an absolute blast with it. I listened to your guys' episode last week, and I'm very much in Travis's camp that all Star Wars is good Star Wars. Even the bad Star Wars is still great Star Wars, and I love it.
It's true.
It's just a joy. That game is a joy. I think I'm in the minority with this next statement in that I'm having a lot of performance issues with it. It crashes or freezes a lot for me. I'm playing on Series S and X. I've tried eliminating quick resume as a possibility. I've had issues on the S and issues on the X. It's been really frustrating actually because I'm having so much fun. I've 100%ed the OG trilogy. I've 100%ed episodes 1 and 2, and I'm working on 3, and then I'll get to sequel. I'm doing it in release order.
Nice.
And I love the game. The flight missions are my favorite because I get Rogue Squadron vibes, and I'm so desperate for a remake of that or a new game in that series. But performance issues have really dampened an otherwise fantastic experience, and I love the game. It's been a lot of fun.
I had one crash. Oh,
whoa. That's crazy.
Whoa. But you've also played it, I think, a lot more than me, Travis. I've only played a couple hours, so
yeah, I've played quite a bit. Really? But yeah, I've only had one.
Are you on PS5?
PlayStation 5. PlayStation 5 is what I'm playing on. I have 0 crashes. And performance is perfect, but for the occasional old NES, too much stuff happening on the screen. But no crashes at all, no loss of progress. So I can't. That sounds horrible. I hate that. But I can't. I cannot relate just on the PlayStation 5 so far.
And I'm glad. I'm glad to know that.
Yes, I'm 7 movies in, half dozen planets, 100%.
Wow.
So I've played a bunch.
Nice.
That's
awesome. One of the neat things about it, I know you all talked about it a bit last week, is just the amount of passion and love they put towards Star Wars overall and how they navigated some of the very dark elements of Star Wars, I think has been largely pretty good because there are some really violent and horrific things that Star Wars can do, and they handled it quite well.
Order 66, that's a very good sequence.
Yep, very good sequence. The dream sequences that Anakin goes through, and not just the men, but the women and the children too. Those are some dark things that happen in otherwise lighthearted movies and stuff. So, but yeah, I love it, loving that game. And I would recommend it even with my performance frustrations, because I think I think I'm in the minority with having that among the Xbox, PlayStation, and PC community. I don't think that it's like a big thing. I think it's just bad luck on my end. And then I've been continuing to enjoy Fortnite no build mode, and that mode continues to bring joy in a lot of ways and brings up a lot of Halo thoughts, plenty, which I know is something we've talked about on other shows, but those have been my 2 go-tos post Elden Ring.
Yeah, I think I know we talked about in cast but it definitely anecdotally feels like the no build mode has brought another audience back to Fortnite. I'm seeing Fortnite on my timeline a lot more than I had in the past couple years. So it seems, and that goes for me too. Like, we've only played a few times, but I would have never reinstalled Fortnite if it wasn't for that mode. So it is a lot of fun.
It's a tactical third-person shooter now, and there's no skyscrapers popping up. And like, sure, you can look like a hot dog, or you can look like the Master Chief. And when I'm jumping in there, my buddy's Thanos, and I'm Master Chief, and Joe is Spider-Man, and Kratos is with us. Like, that's fun. Like, that's cool. There's a silliness to it, but the combat and the movement is top notch. There's a reason the game is so popular, and it's because it's good. And I think a lot of people, including myself at one point, wrote it off because it was like, oh, it's for 12-year-olds. Man, those games can get intense and fun. And it makes me hopeful for what we see out of other modes that are coming to Infinite down the line.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, which we'll be talking about here shortly. So, Rick, what you been up to, man? Anything good?
Well, so I have been playing Fortnite. I'm on the road to Doctor Strange. That depending on the end of season stuff, that always gets me. So I can kind of go a couple seasons without playing and then playing it. I'm actually playing normal mode, not the zero build mode. But my girls like to play that. That's one that we play together, so that's a lot of fun. In terms of other games, I'm also playing Chinatown Detective Agency.
Nice.
Talked about that. It is effectively Cyber Dark's Carmen Sandiego. For those of you that haven't played it, it's effectively figure out where this person went. This thing is being done with some pretty extraneous clues, and then you're supposed to use the internet. Now, the tricky part about that, and video games, computer games really haven't gotten around it, is you have to be very careful about how you search, because you're just as likely to jump into the guide that someone has written about the quest that you're on for the answers. So you want to avoid finding somebody talking to you directly about the mission when you're determining the population of Kuala Lumpur. So you have to try to avoid it. But other than that, it's a lot of fun. It's well written. And it's a cyber Singapore dealing with some corruption and some stuff that you'd be used to seeing, but in the gameplay of researching Carmen Sandiego missions. And I might be aging myself there.
I
don't even recognize
I was just going to say, I think we're probably at a point now where there's a whole generation that probably doesn't even know what Carmen Sandiego is.
Or just the Netflix show. So that's a lot of fun. I didn't know what to expect from that. It's an old school adventure game with a research element. And as someone that likes researching things, this is proven to be in my wheelhouse. Cool. Other than that, I've been playing a lot of Skywalker Saga, and I've been playing some older games. I was checking in on Far Cry 6, Rage 2. I was just checking in, trying to find something to play through that is in kind of that vein. And I don't know that I've found it just yet for what I want to do for right now, but we've got a little bit of time now between big releases, at least that I care about.
Yeah.
And so that's always fun to go back and figure things out. I still have to beat Horizon fully, that kind of thing. So I'm kind of in that mode, cycling around those, with Fortnite being the game that I'm playing for I don't want to think about it too hard.
Sure. Funny enough, I reviewed Rage 2. Great gunplay, but the world left quite a lot to be desired.
Yep. I mean, that's it.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Have you played, speaking of, Rage 2 made me think of it, but have you played the modern Wolfensteins and Dooms?
Yes. Yeah. I played the Wolfensteins.
Okay. Yeah. Those are great games for the most part, especially Wolfenstein 2.
Yeah. I didn't like the one with the siblings.
Yeah. The New Blood.
Oh yeah. I reviewed that. Terrible.
Yeah. Okay. As soon as we found the bad one, Travis is like, "Yeah, I reviewed that one."
Yep. I
Travis,
played the other two, but I reviewed the bad one always. Yeah.
Postal, Nerf Legends. You're having a joy, man.
Man.
We joked that he got Wonderlands, and that must have been a mistake. We'll have to fix that. But
no, I think, and the other thing, I like Chinatown Detective Agency. I'm invested in cases and detectiveness right now, so I'm also doing Ace Attorney with my girls, which we do all the time. But we have an Easter Ace Attorney session coming up after this show. So
nice.
Hogue family. Doing it our way, and then I'm getting back into Lost Judgment, which I really only kind of flirted with when it first came out. So
Shame
everybody
Dan's
always asks me about Judgment. It's like, yes, that is technically a lawyer. The Judgment series does not reflect my experience as an attorney, but that's all right.
You got to go to Japan, man. Much
Are
more
they-
common there.
Are they skateboarding up next to mafiosos and hitting them on a
For
okay,
sure.
I
For
do have to
sure.
visit them.
Yeah.
I think I
thought it
saw
was
that
a
on
little
TikTok.
hyperbolic.
That's actually written in their constitution.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. I do love that series, though. I mean, I love all those the Yakuza games, but I really I can't remember what was out at the time. But Lost Judgment came out, and I was doing something else. I was like, put it in your back pocket, play it later, and this summer might be the time.
Apparently, it gets really good. So Dan figured he's not here this week. He's the Yakuza like nut. But he said Lost Judgment is excellent and actually far better than the first one, which he also liked. But
I
he
like the
said,
first one too.
yeah, he said Lost Judgment, by the time you get, more into it, he adores it. So we'll have to hear your continued progress on that one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
All those games are awesome.
Yeah. By the way, we got a super chat earlier. I was kind of holding on to it, but I see Eric's got a bounce, so I'm going to go ahead and just read it right now. This is from Eric Game Positive, $6.99 Canadian super chat. Thank you so much, brother. The breadth of modern open world games is truly wild. I don't like you, Eric. Happy Easter, you beautiful bastards. Appreciate it, brother.
You think that wild was surreptitiously referencing something else, Ames?
And so is the breadth, I would say.
Because he writes for SG and we joke about it all the time. Yes, I do think so. He is a huge Breath of the Wild fan, so and he knows the conversation we're about to have.
It is a great game.
And I forgot that I invited Luke. I should have invited someone a little more intelligent for this conversation, but we'll deal with it.
Yeah, you're down 3-1 here, Ames. It's okay.
I know. It's all right. I can hold it. It's no problem. The facts are on my side, which is what really matters. So.
He's used to taking 3-1.
Ah.
We had to go. You've been playing too much Postal, man. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and jump over to the main topic, which is, as I said at the top of the show, a conversation on what makes a good open world game. There's only a couple other kind of topics we'll touch on after this, but the big discussion today, and I thought it'd be a good one to have with our chat as well in the community. And I actually got some feedback on Twitter yesterday, which I'm kind of pulling up to get to. But we've talked over the past few years about games like Breath of the Wild, of course, Witcher 3, Red Dead 2, Grand Theft Auto 5, and then Elden Ring kind of reignited this conversation, I believe, which is, what makes a great open world game, because Elden Ring obviously mechanically does things a lot differently from some of the other traditional open world games we're talking about. And then you have the classic kind of Bethesda games like Skyrim or Oblivion that people point to, and Fallout and things like that. So the conversation I wanted to have with you guys really is a little more broad, which is, the main question, of course, is what makes an excellent open world game to you personally. But like, what aspects do you look for? Like when you think about your favorite open world games, what aspects do they have in them that really kind of grab you and intrigue you and kind of keep you playing? So Luke, I'm going to start with you here as the guest to kind of elaborate a little bit, get us started.
Well, I think first perspective comes into play. Am I playing a first or third person exploration game? That makes a big difference to me in the type of character that I see and how I immerse myself into that world. If it's first person, my perspective of my own character can be very different than, like, say, an Elden Ring where it's third person and I see myself within the world. That actually does impact a lot of what I'm looking for. There is a philosophy that I think the Witcher 3 developers used. It's like this 40-second loop of discovery where every 40 seconds you should be seeing something that is interesting. And as I look back at some of my favorite open world games, from my maligned and favorite Arkham Knight to the Breath of the Wild elements of explorability, if I'm seeing things regularly that can take my attention away from a crit path, and enjoyably so, I'm excited by that. I look for things to do in an open world that don't feel fetch questy or useless, and they bring an element of discovery or excitement to whatever character I'm playing. And I talk about first and third person. When I can see Batman, I want to play like Batman. Where if I'm in first person, maybe I take a different route and I'm trying to be somebody that's different. I haven't played a first person exploration game outside of Infinite in some time, and I'm looking forward to doing that with Cyberpunk. But it really does change how I want to play. When I played in Elden Ring, I wanted to be my character based on the outfit he or she was wearing, which is maybe unique to me, but I like to get into the role that is suited to what I'm seeing.
Interesting. Um, So, yeah, I think that's a good start. And I'm going to pull up some comments intermittently interspersed between our conversation here. So, Super Jaffa Games on Twitter commented and left me like 4 comments yesterday about this. So, he mentioned that basically there needs to be the incentive of the unknown to make exploration worthwhile. And I think some of the games you mentioned and we're going to mention do that extremely well. He said it doesn't like when half the game is just spent going from point A to point B, especially when there's really nothing eventful, because then it just makes you want to fast travel and there's really nothing kind of happening in the world around you that is interesting. So he says his favorite games in the genre, actually pretty much everyone brings up the same games here. So he said Red Dead 2, Breath of the Wild, Elden Ring. But he said while much less revolutionary, he thinks Ghost of Tsushima did a few small things that he really liked from an open world perspective as well. So the other comment that I want to mention, because I thought about this last night, and DE says in our chat here, let's not only think about 3D open worlds, right? I think when we talk about open world experiences nowadays, everyone thinks of the ones we just mentioned. But there's a lot of 2D experiences that are technically open world, even if you're going screen to screen. You know, he brought up the original Zelda as an open world experience, which for the time it really is. I even thought, and funny enough, Rick, you'll probably get a laugh out of this, but I was thinking last night, I don't know if I was dreaming or what, but I started thinking of the old King's Quest and Quest games. Because even though you're going screen to screen, you really had no idea what to expect going screen to screen. It was, you just explored away. So they didn't have the technology at the time to do what we know today, but that really was, kind of an open world experience, right? You're not on a linear path. So a lot of good examples there. But Travis, I'll jump over to you. What are your initial thoughts here?
Yeah, I think I have very few opinions about what makes a good open world game, just because I think that there's a ton of ways to do it right. And obviously there are examples of it being bad, but I think those are more when kind of their vision for the open world doesn't really come together. But there's just, I see people say like things that are kind of generalizations in terms of what makes something good, like having to have something to discover every couple seconds and stuff like that. I'm sure that is probably a common attribute in certain types of open world, but it's also not necessarily true that exists for it to be a good open world. I think it really just depends on the type of game you're making and what your goals are with the design. Obviously, the key element for me, when I'm evaluating an open world, is do I have fun doing it, right? Like, does it work what they were trying to do? But I think that there are so many different versions of what makes it what could be good that it's really hard for me to just look at the entire kind of premise and decide on one and go, okay, that's the one that should be right and applied to everything. Because if you think about it, like, what's an example of a world where you don't really discover anything but it's still good? Grand Theft Auto 5. There you go. That's a world where you don't really discover anything. It doesn't have kind of like that open world exploration, but that one's sort of like a sandbox where you're making your own fun and it works super well, right? So that, like, there's an example of one that I would say is like a really good open world that kind of doesn't meet that requirement. So I just think there's, like you said, like there's the 2D, there's 3D, there's open world where it's all about discovery. There's open world where and somebody else in the comments said they don't really like it when it's all you just passing through the area, but also some games that is the point. It like makes you kind of like journey, right? It's kind of, that's sort of the process of doing it. I would say a lot of people put what's the game, Death Stranding, in that boat, right, where it really is about the journey and going through. And I didn't like that game, I just think it's boring, but it is a good example of like one in that genre, right? And so I really do think like I have a hard time having strong opinions on this, because there's anytime I would say like this has to be in it to be good, you could give me an example of a really good game that doesn't do that, and then I'd be like, oh yeah, good point. You know what I mean? So that's my big problem with this, is I just don't have any things that like for sure have to be in it for it to be good. Just
I think that's a really good point, Travis, in that sometimes we don't know what it is that makes it special or tangible within an open world. And I'll go back to the thing I brought up at the very beginning about this 40-second loop of discoverability or something to do, whatnot. And the player could travel in any direction for 40 seconds, real time, and discover or see something to do. And whatever that means for that world, whether it's sandboxy like Grand Theft Auto or a bit more discoverable and combat wise with something like Elden Ring, as long as there's something to do where you're not just walking for over 40 seconds in any direction, that's probably a good barometer. But I think it's really interesting. It's like, what is the right answer here? You know, if I'm playing Arkham Knight, is whatever. It's a Batman moment. I want a Batman moment every few feet. If I'm playing Grand Theft Auto, I don't really like that world. That's not really fun for me. I feel like a regular guy. So like, what am I doing? Am I making my own fun by driving fast or causing havoc with pedestrians? There's, you know, in Elden Ring, the first 3 hours, I was just running away from things every 40 seconds, you know, and it's dependent
Does that go
upon.
away at some point? I never
What do you
stop running away in Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to touch in on that one. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're fine. Rick, what do you think, man?
I know that I prefer milquetoast opinions, and I don't like to say things controversial in this space. But I think open world design is very often a hindrance for the gameplay experience, and it's become a bit of a checkbox for what you want to release as a game. So what I look for as an open world is a developer that is understanding of why this game is open world and what they are seeking to achieve with it. I think at this point, you know that narrative is very important to me, and that's what drives me into long gameplay sessions. So when you've got an open world that a developer isn't going to be able to control the pace of, and that's really what I mean by hindrance, right? You could throw all these things everywhere, and you lose the ability to kind of contour that gameplay experience from a story perspective, when they're going to hit things, how it's going to kind of arc, and not one of the problems I had very early on with like your Grand Theft Auto 3s or Vice Cities or whatever, that kind of era, was maybe you do get distracted and you go do something, and then you try to get back into the main story, and you're like, I don't even remember. Am I avenging something? Did somebody burn a restaurant down? I don't know what's going on, and you have to try to get back into that. So one of the things that I like from an open world is drive. That first couple of hours of catapulting you into that dynamic open world in a way that you still feel driven as a character. One of my favorite bits of this, and I'm not saying this as one of the best open worlds, though I like it, is Mafia 3 of all things, which I think has an absolute catapult of an early narrative that sends you into that game. And that lasts for, unfortunately, approximately half of its running time. Like you needed a second catapult there at the act break, but it is so effective at getting you into that kind of revenge story, who wronged you, how you're going to have to deal with that leaves the open world in a place that you want to explore and you want to go places to. And I think that if you're a developer, I think Travis said it exactly right. As long as you have an inkling of why you're doing this, right? Death Stranding is a great example. I love that game. It was my game of the year. Travis and I can have that disagreement some other time, but I totally understand if you hate it. It's a very weird Marmite type game. It's clearly trying to put the open world in there as every inch a mile, every step of difficulty that you're going to earn getting to that point over there, even if it's rocks and mountains and streams between you and there, that you're earning it. And there is a value to feeling like you conquered something by the time you got to that point in time. Similarly, the original Mafia, right, says, okay, this is a game where you're not going to explore an open world for the most part. You're going to go from mission to mission, but we're trying to establish a tone. We're trying to set you in, I think they're in the 1930s. Don't kill me, chat, if that's wrong, but I think the first Mafia game is in the 1930s. And you're traveling and you're feeling like you're in something like a New York City in the 1930s as part of setting a tone for a narrative. And so there's right ways and there are wrong ways to do an open world to me. And the wrong ways are, that's what people like. And you can feel that in some games. You can feel like, oh, well, we're doing towers and we're doing whatever because people want an open world. And if it's not in service of either the story or the gameplay or something that is one of your foundational pillars, chances are people are going to bounce off of it. Certainly I am. And so that's what I look for. I look for those narrative hooks. I look for developers that understand what they're doing with an open world and aren't just putting things down. I know Ubisoft gets accused of that a lot. And that's one of the reasons why Assassin's Creed Odyssey is my favorite of their new Assassin's Creed, is because the background of an Odyssey, of traveling to these different islands, of really feeling like every inch a mile, very similar to Death Stranding, and going on these various adventures, fit what they built better than Origins or Valhalla. Again, in my opinion, narratively. But that's what makes an open world better to me. Yes, I want to explore stuff. Yes, Witcher 3 has best in class writing and it circles in, and that narrative is fantastic, and that's why I like it the best. But all of these different open worlds can be done well as long as they're being made with the understanding of why they exist. So I'm on Travis's side there that says you're not looking for a specific thing. It's all going to depend on what the game itself is. And certainly I have, in the back of my head, developers that I think do it better and developers that I think do it worse.
Yeah.
Rick, does your character impact what it is you want to do in the world? I mean, that's a theme for me. Does that impact what you want to do in your world?
Yeah, I mean, take Mafia 3, for instance. I'm not particularly driven to get revenge on people in a city. That one really drives you into, look out, San Francisco. But that one really drives you into that mindset. And yes, I think all games that I play, from open world games down to MLB The Show, I put a dose of role playing in. Like that's just what I do. I want to make it to the show. I want to play the players. I'm the kind of guy that walks if he thinks it's more of what would be in a movie cinematic of what you're doing in the type of game that you're playing. So I am very often doing that, and that does drive me. It's one of the reasons I bounce off Rockstar games as hard as I do, especially the Grand Theft Auto series, is because it's all so cynical and nihilistic, and that's not me. So it's a real disconnect between that level of satire and disbelief. And Travis is once again saying nihilism. That's where I live.
It's satirical. It's not nihilistic, but yeah.
I think it's both. But we can have that discussion.
I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, Frick. Go ahead.
That's really all I had on that. Absolutely.
Yeah, obviously Witcher 3 is going to come up from me and others in this conversation. But to further your point there, Rick, and to your point too, Luke, about kind of role playing, I think that's one of the things that Witcher 3 does extremely well is, it introduces you to the role of Geralt. Even if you haven't played Witcher 1 or 2, right? It introduces you to the role of Geralt. You have the kind of White Orchard area that we talk about a lot, which kind of introduces all of the mechanics of the game, why they're important, who Ciri is, who Vesemir is, what monster hunting is, and why you do it. And then you get this gigantic open world. But I feel like as you're going through that world, right, I would say the vast majority of what you do, whether it's the side quests, which are extremely well written, or like the monster hunting and the little side quests where you're hunting these different creatures, it all ties back to what being a Witcher is. And you constantly are reinforced of the experience of what being a Witcher is in that world. Because, a lot of people know the Witcher more now, especially because of the show, but Witchers in the books are these kind of superhuman monster creations, right? That a lot of general society looks down upon, and you get that experience playing that game. And I think that is really, really important too. Going back to go ahead.
Just jumping in, Witcher 3 is my go-to for that role-playing experience. You get the feel of rolling in on your horse, kind of sadly destitute a little bit, trying to figure out how to get coins and seeing something on the hunting board. And like it, regardless of the rest of the main story, Witcher is built to give you that exact fantasy, which isn't a particularly powerful fantasy in some respects, but that you are a Witcher, you're doing these things. And I absolutely love, I know people bag on the combat, but I love that you can research the monster, you can go and figure out the weaknesses, then you apply the potions and things that are going to work against that monster the best. That feels to me like this is what that experience is, and all of that design and the open world and the size and the little hamlets that you go and find to try to recover or work on your armor or your weapons. All of that feeds into what that fantasy is. It's not just extraneous. It's not just icons on a map. And that, that's one of the pinnacles to me.
I know you don't like Rockstar, but I would say Red Dead 2 also meets every qualification you just said.
Red Dead has pacing issues up to wazoo.
But I mean, the whole living that fantasy of a cowboy, it nails that of an outlaw. You can't say it doesn't do that. It's no.
I think Red Dead's a great open world. Yeah. I think Red Dead 2 is a great open world. I don't like it as a game because I don't find the story compelling. Right? I just talked about catapulting. I just talked about narrative drive. I find it meandering and either repetitive. I think it's very, very repetitive, or pointless in equal measure.
We're gonna have to leave that one alone because that's a tough one.
A lot of people love Red Dead Redemption 2. More power to them. I engage with that game for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and I just find the actual missions to be far too on rails. and I find the narrative of those missions to be repetitive in the extreme for perhaps the first 30, 40 hours.
How are you going to say Red Dead 2 is repetitive and then say you love Death Stranding? How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? Tell me.
Death Stranding is, first of all, it's not even that repetitive. It's giving you mechanics every 5 minutes in that game. But how
Travis has the whole range of faces right now.
Yeah.
but there's a bigger thing he's touching on is like Red Dead 2 is a cowboy simulator. And if you don't want to be a cowboy, you're not going to have fun.
There you go.
You're not going to enjoy that.
That's fair.
Yeah, but I didn't want to be a mafioso revenge seeker in New Orleans in Mafia 3. There's a duty of the developers to get me there, and I don't think they achieved that in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Did they do it successfully in Red Dead 1?
I liked Red Dead 1 better than 2.
I 100%ed Red Dead 1. That was one of my most proud achievements, was getting that Redeemer achievement. But I've never touched Red Dead 2. I have no desire to, based on the continuous anecdotes that people. I don't want to be a cowboy. That's
no. But I'm just laughing at the fact that you agree with people down talking Red Dead 2 and then say, "I've never touched Red Dead 2." Like, come on, man.
Let me be Red Dead 2. I will take Luke under my wing. I have played a ton.
But let me be clear about why I don't have a desire to be a cowboy at that level of immersion, that level of intricacy. Whereas Red Dead 1 there's more gamification of it. At least it felt so when I played it.
No, there is.
Does that make sense? That's the real reason, like outside of our joking, why I'm not interested in playing Red Dead 2, but I will go play Elden Ring or something like that. Does that make sense?
In a way. Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm going to defend Red Dead 2. I'm going to defend Red Dead 2 till the end of time. I will. I've said this before, but I will legitimately argue from a world development standpoint, not character development, world development, and what was created as a sandbox, that Red Dead 2 is the pinnacle. Period.
I've never ever fought anybody on saying Red Dead 2 doesn't have a great open world.
Yeah, I agree with you
against that.
And I don't argue with people like yourself who say it has pacing issues. It does have pacing issues, 100%. But I think we talked earlier, right, about what a developer and a game sets out to achieve, right? And clearly, Rockstar, especially if you know the development of Red Dead 2, which was absurd, how many people worked on that game and how much time they spent, right? They set out to achieve, to Travis's point, they set out to achieve a legitimate Western world where you're a cowboy and what that was like. And it's hard to argue they didn't achieve that. Pacing issues aside from the story, what they set out to achieve, I think they achieved tenfold.
Yeah, I think Hoag's point is that the thing that they achieved has to be something that you like,
that you enjoy. 100%.
I get that.
I think they have to lead you to water. I mean, I think that the opening of Red Dead Redemption 2 sets a very bad path for that game. It is very laborious and long-winded when you're out in the snow mountain.
You didn't like that?
Yeah.
Really?
No.
A lot of people didn't. I've heard that feedback too, is it takes you too long to get to the open world part. But yeah, I mean, I would say the same thing about Death Stranding on my end, is like they certainly succeeded at their goals. I just think that their goals ended up being super dull, and I don't want to be in that world. But that, it's kind of all that's people's
goes back to what you enjoy, right?
Because we're each entitled to our opinions, and I love Travis to death. But if you were to ask me, name your dullest game, it would probably be Red Dead. And the most experimental, the most experiential might be Death Stranding, because that game is utterly fantastic in both what it has to say and how it has to say it. So it's interesting. It's just interesting to see other people's perspectives. Sure. And by the way, that's not just me being argumentative. That's how you grow. I love hearing from people like Travis. I love hearing from people that love things I don't, because one, that can help you find things to love about something that you didn't before.
Yep.
I will.
That's why this is fun.
Yeah, I will agree with everything you say, except I will be extremely offended at the fact that our Red Dead Redemption 2 is your most boring game, because you haven't played the games I've played then. That's all I have to say.
Until the end of time. I have not played the games that IGN assigns you.
If you played the games that I was assigned, then I think you have easily a better. It's funny. Somebody somebody at Colin's site said that Deathloop was the worst game that came out in 2021.
Come on.
And I literally, when I heard that, I was just like, you didn't play the games I played in 2021,
or
right?
many
Like,
games at all.
Yeah,
Like,
I was just like, that's your worst game in 2021.
Good Lord.
I would love it if I could say that Deathloop was the worst game I played.
See, I might be responsible
That
for
would be
some of that. I did a spoiler cast on Deathloop over at Last Stand.
So
There you
we've got a few super chats and I've got some comments I want to get to as well. So let me get to these super chats real quick. So Fat Boy Horror in the house, what's up, man? Good morning. He says, I don't care. Bethesda, Ubisoft, and CD Projekt Red have me by the balls. And I think that's true of a lot of people, right? I think that there's certain developers, obviously, that people look to for their open world experiences. And I do want to touch a little more on Ubisoft because I know Rick mentioned it. We mentioned it here quite a bit, is that they do get a lot of flack from a lot of people around the way they design their worlds. I think some is rightfully so. Maybe some is a little too aggressive, but we'll talk more about that for sure. Gecko Gamer back in the house, €5 super chat says, what does a sandbox game like KSP? What is KSP?
KSP.
What is KSP? Kerbal Space Program.
Oh, okay. Sandbox game. Nice job.
Good job.
Different from it. Yeah, thank you.
Wow, all right.
Different from an open world. Also, the Just Cause games feel weirdly
yeah,
underappreciated.
Just
Good point.
Cause.
Talk about a
I can't help but
sandbox.
pronounce that series as, why are you doing this? Just cause.
Just cause,
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about sandbox experiences where you can just do whatever the heck you want, I would have to agree with you for sure.
That's sort of like GTA 5. It's very, very similar.
And
Yeah.
the
Although
Just
a little
Cause,
even crazier. Yeah.
well, the Just Cause games are so different because it's that sandbox experience versus some of the Ubisoft titles that were, he's talking about saying, he says, have them by the balls. Like there's something special about clearing a map and getting, opening up the world and clearing areas. That's a different type of incentive versus the sandbox elements of Just Cause or GTA versus progressing a story, as you guys described in Red Dead 2. And all of those are open worlds, but what you're getting out of them, what you're going for, are very fundamentally different.
Yeah,
and I think some of that ties to your personality too, right? Like I know people who adore Ubisoft games, and I know people who despise them.
I'm a
And the
fan
people,
of you begin.
yeah, I remember you saying before, and I don't know if this applies to you or not, Rick, but some of the people I've talked to that really enjoy them, they don't mind at all that the game is littered with little marks on the map to go and check out, and they kind of love the feeling they get of this kind of. Funny enough, we talked about it with the achievement and trophy discussion last week, but they really love the feeling of just saying, here's a whole list of things you can go do, and I'm going to do them and check them off one by one. And they love the feeling of completing those sections by sections and just what they get out of that. And there's obviously nothing wrong with that, but it's a very different experience, especially almost fundamentally when you look at something like Elden Ring, right? Where it's there's no checklist at all. You're just left to your own devices. So it's I think a lot of it ties down to personal preference, of course. As most
of course
things do.
it does. Yeah, but UB Game is good at that. I always think that's a little bit overblown because you can just filter however you like. Sometimes people just assume whatever the default setting of anything is the way the game has to be played or meant to be played, and I always think that's interesting. I do enjoy UB games. I tend to like them for what I call virtual tourism, especially Assassin's Creed. I just like to go see a fully built, Greek Empire with all the digital resources that one can throw at it, that kind of thing.
They do a really good job with that.
Assassin's Creed is the best at that. I mean, I think that they are the virtual tourism masters, and that includes things like even like the Far Cry 6. I mean, their Cuba has got a lot of cool stuff in it, very well done. And so I think that's what I tend to go to for them. It's certainly not good storytelling. I like Far Cry's enough, but it's pretty much the same with Watch Dogs. I think Odyssey is their best
Assassin's
story.
Creed too. Yeah, the story.
Assassin's Creed 2 is a long time ago, but yes.
I think you meant TOO, didn't you? Like Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, I mean Assassin's Creed also, like their open world is kind of the main draw because the stories haven't been good in a while.
Well, I think Odyssey's story is great, but I think Origins and Valhalla is not.
Yeah, I don't know. I had trouble with Odyssey. Maybe it's because that game took me like 160 hours to beat, and I couldn't even remember how it started by the time it ended.
It's a huge game.
It is an
huge game.
Yeah.
So and then, there's a couple other chats in here that I'll get to in a second, but Mariano Pompa back in the house with the $9.99 super chat. He says, what about music in the open world? So Witcher 3 music when you enter combat or just going to different areas in the world is Chef's Kiss, Skellige Island's music is always my favorite, and I would have to agree. There's a track on that soundtrack called it's either Skellige or something like that. I remember that I've listened to like hundreds of times. It's just so good.
Yeah,
so
well,
I
I
think
should have a default rule that I think music is paramount to anybody's emotional connection and resonance with a video game, and that it is often skipped unwarrantedly as to whatever we're talking about. So games with the best music, I'm always going to love the best. I mean, that's just how I work. So this is a fantastic comment, and I agree with this person very, very much.
Yeah, 100%. It's something that I always look for. Witcher 3. It's just it's another aspect. I know that game keeps coming up, but it's another aspect that is just so excellent about that game. So that soundtrack is phenomenal. Yeah. By the way, they did a live kind of symphony performance of that soundtrack. If you enjoy that soundtrack and you haven't seen that, check it out because it's incredible.
I would argue that's actually one of the things Bethesda open world games do better than most others. Like even, if you don't like Fallout 4, the soundtrack in the game is ridiculously good. Skyrim, really good. Just iconic soundtracks.
Yeah,
Man,
iconic.
I have to think about Fallout 4. I have to be honest.
For Skyrim, I can hear in my head right now. And you know what I mean?
I can do Skyrim. I can do Skyrim.
Yeah, I 100%ed Fallout 4. So I know the songs, but yeah, it's pretty good. I think that's good.
It's, thinking about the shift to sci-fi, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Starfield, of course.
They're just going to take the soundtrack direct from the Halo TV series.
I knew you were going to say it. I knew you were going to say it.
No, it'll be the exact opposite because the music will be hopeful. You know what I mean? Halo's all like humanity sucks, everything's terrible.
They lean too hard into what they want is that like industrial sci-fi, and they go with something really piano plinky and Solaris-y and weird, because that'll pull me out. That doesn't work for me. So I hope they do have hopeful orchestration, Star Trek more than Space Odyssey / Solaris.
Yeah, it's not gonna be doom and gloom in space for sure. I think it'll be more like Star Trek probably.
Funny enough, we get a comment from CMAD. Good morning, CMAD. He says DayZ is the greatest open world game on the planet. He's very direct here. It allows you, the player, to create the type of experience you want every time you log in with no restrictions. So that's go ahead.
And you say that that's subjective. It totally is. DayZ, glad you love it. I pay developers to curate a gaming experience for me. That's where I live. I want your talent and your creativity to make something for me, and I want to have paid for it rather than figuring out my own fun. That's where I live. And I know others differ. That's totally fine. But I want the game developers to have balanced something. I want them to have figured out their economy. I want them to have narrative drive. That's the experience I'm looking for.
He wants the railroad.
Well, not a railroad.
He wants to be on the train.
World, I want you to have thought about how it all works together. I love Witcher 3's, depending on the day, my favorite game of all time. So you have to make sure that it all works together. You can't have something that just dies within 10 hours, and you have to have thought about how all the pieces will play for me personally, because I'm playing, but obviously for different players as well.
I just think both can be good. Like, obviously, sometimes it's nice to ride the railroads and just like have the experience that they gave you. And then sometimes it's really fun to buck the system or for there to be no kind of rules and you kind of figure it out on your own. And I think that's probably the main divider between people who like and dislike Elden Ring is really the people who I think are expecting, like, I want to see the progression, and the people who like me are like, progression is the last thing I want in this game. I want to just like be able to go out and kind of explore and have no kind of path.
I just want to drive. I just wanted some reason to be out here doing something. I mean, that's really all I wanted, but I did not get it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's sort of like, I think it's probably that trait where you want to see the story that they created or the thing that they created. And I think Elden Ring is driving a lot of players who want to find their own fun and kind of like explore the world
and
freely.
They're finding it. I mean, people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it definitely hits that need pretty well.
I find it's a very interesting dichotomy you guys are speaking through between the two there, because I know we've talked about this, and I don't want to keep talking about the same thing with Elden Ring, but that you mentioned having a drive there, and I can see your point of view, Rick, with Elden Ring, and I know I've talked to other players about this, where it's like they get the world design and how you can go off and do kind of whatever you want, but there's nothing keeping them going, right? They don't feel there's something inherently in the game that is showing them, hey, here's why you need to keep driving forward.
That's what happened to me.
Yeah, and I think for me, and it sounds like Travis, and I know Luke, you obviously have a ton of time in Elden Ring now, which was your first Souls game, by the way.
Yes, proper from FromSoft. Yes.
Yeah, from game. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But for me, the drive is there's an interesting point. I'm going to circle this back to Breath of the Wild, and I seriously don't want to harp on Breath of the Wild today. I promise.
I'm ready.
But but the difference between those two for me, because there was a lot of references right there, and a lot of people talk about Breath of the Wild when they talk about open world experiences where it's a world you go off and do what you want and discoverability in these things. And I've said it before. What I found that I really enjoyed about Elden Ring is that every time I kind of went off 50 feet in that direction or that direction, it was a dungeon or a boss or a new enemy or an item. Right. I felt like not necessarily the progress as you guys were talking about it, like a narrative driving progress, something you're working towards. Right. But I felt like I was the sense of discoverability is fantastic. But I felt like I was being rewarded for my exploration. Like if I go over here and I did this dungeon right at the end, I know I'm going to get something that could be meaningful to my character or build, right, and help me in different ways, or even give me a different way to play the game, which can happen in Elden Ring. Whereas that's what I didn't get out of Zelda, Breath of the Wild specifically, is that I completely agree that there's the open world and this kind of sandbox where you can go off and you can interact with the world in interesting ways. But when you talk about the shrines and you talk about the different things you find, weapon durability always comes up. We joke about that, but I didn't feel like anything fundamentally was necessarily worthwhile. Like my time was well spent. Like if I had spent 3 hours going over here and exploring this castle area and fighting some enemies, and then I got a sword that would break after 20 hits, it's like, well, what was the point in doing all that? There was nothing building that rewarded me for doing that other than the experience itself. And if you're someone who just enjoys that experience itself, that's a whole different thing. But
sometimes it's not about the reward, right? Which I mean,
Sure,
you feel rewarded in Elden Ring, and Rick probably feels the opposite because when he explores an area, he just gets murdered, and then he doesn't feel rewarded by his exploration at all.
I do clear areas, Travis. So you just hold your horses.
Let's see it. I want to see the Hogue
35
stream.
hours. No, I think that's a fair critique. And that to me almost speaks to the meta economy more than anything else, because for the most part, Zelda's handing out hearts and stamina bars like that. I mean, that's the biggest stuff that Zelda's handing out. And one of the best things that Elden Ring did, and I noticed this immediately as I was playing it, is that they had enough categories of stuff that they could hand you, especially adding summonings in, that it always felt like you got something that could potentially be useful and interesting at the end of one of those. I just think the small dungeons are the same as the shrines, and they have kind of that same level of impact on me.
It's a fair comparison.
And what I would say is this is entirely subjective for people. I would rather hang out in Hyrule than the lands between. I don't like hanging out for dozens and dozens of hours in infernal hellscapes with fingers talking to me and trying to figure out what that thing is that is that shape on the horizon.
It can be draining for sure. I get that.
So that's just me. And this has come up in other contexts where it's like, oh, I can get into a horror game. I can get into the BioShocks of the world for a while. If I can't play like 3 of those games in a row, which is what Elden Ring asks of you. So I did my 35 hours. I saw what I think is the bulk of what it's going to be. And I said, okay, I'll come back to it maybe later after I've lost all the skills that I had gained. And I really have a tough time transitioning into the next area, and we'll make it there. But I sit here and say, I think I saw Elden Ring. And I moved to the next thing.
I think I'm liking my thesis more and more the more we talk about this. The fact that there's like a million different ways to do open world, right? Because to hearing you guys talk about it, the things you look for, I like all those things, kind of both sides of what you guys are saying, whether it's story or the kind of the freedom or all that stuff. But I also like, I like both of them. I just think each of them can be done well. Like weirdly, one of my favorite open world games is Minecraft. Like I think that's one of the best ones out there because it combines kind of you do have a progression if you're playing on the survival mode, but you also have unlimited exploration. I mean, like really unlimited. And the fact that it's different every time you play it, like that. God, man, just I wouldn't even begin to quantify like what makes an open world game good. It's just like you just know it when you see it. That's the way I would describe it. You play it and you're like, this does it well.
Well, survival crafters are an entirely different bucket in my head to quote.
But DayZ's on
open
that.
world.
DayZ's part of that.
Yeah, no, I get that. I just when I'm even evaluating what do I feel like playing, like DayZ or Subnautica or Minecraft, they aren't competing with Horizon.
No Man's Sky,
3
also very
No Man's
open
Sky's
world
over
game.
in the you're never going to tell me a story camp over here.
It has a story now.
Wait, doesn't it? I was saying, isn't
Yeah, it has a story.
No Man's Sky now like it's apples and oranges from where it was, and now it's completely different?
Yes.
I reviewed it last year for IGN. And it's very different.
Well, they just put out the Outlaw thing, which is a whole new experience, right? I'm asking out of ignorance, not because I know.
No, they've wildly changed it. They add big things all the time. I think they just added a big thing like last week.
Yeah.
No
it is an open world game though.
No Man's Sky is in good hands for what it wants to be, but it's not really that invested in narratively talking to you. How about I leave it at that? They've put more resources into that. It's not its drive.
Yes, I think that's fair.
I don't know.
The main drive in No Man's Sky is not its narrative, not even close.
I think that's one of the reasons you play it, though. You reach milestones. It has like I don't know.
You're talking about the Atlas stuff, and it's not great. If you were to be evaluated on the story of No Man's Sky, it would be like a 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because you're adding I don't even know how to quantify it. Like I said, like I reviewed No Man's Sky last year for IGN, and I think my review title was Star Chores, because you do chores in space, right? Which that is definitely a lot of it, but I don't know. I mean, it is open world game. If you're talking about the open world part of it, not the story, I would say.
I like No Man's Sky. It's just I would never, in my head, I want to be told a great story or get engaged in a narrative. That one's not going on.
Yeah.
So
what about Sunset Overdrive?
Sunset Overdrive has a strangely compelling narrative by the time you finish it.
It does.
No.
Yeah, I adore that.
Good open world.
I adore that game. Yeah,
that's great.
I wish it was high res. No, because it's like go update Sunset Overdrive.
I know. Come on.
They got bought by Sony.
Yeah. Well,
they have the rights to Sunset Overdrive. I want to say I'd have to go look at that IP.
I don't even care if they do a remaster and just put it on PS5 only. I don't even care.
Just with res.
Just do it.
Don't change anything. Just give us that old, the stuff that Xbox is adding to all its backward compatibility stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just give us FPS boost and auto HDR and call it a day. Gecko's pushing the boundary a little bit of our open world experience here. So €5 super chat, Gecko Gamer. Could games like Roller Coaster Tycoon and SimCity be considered open world?
I'm going to have to limit this to an avatar in the space.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I don't know if you can. That's too broad for me.
Yeah, I kind of think
it has to be an avatar navigating a space.
People are mentioning Spider-Man. G-Man says Spider-Man example
of course.
Main draw is a traversal combat and not the exploration. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of comments here. I'm trying to get through. That's why you see me looking all over my screen. So
that goes to Travis's point. Spider-Man is a great open world, but it's not really discovery based. I mean, it's Manhattan.
And as a diehard superhero fan, like the things to do in Spider-Man's world, while there's a lot of them, they're pretty limited in scope for what you do. That the encounters all feel very similar.
That's actually why I lost interest in the game. I stopped.
You're not robbing people. You're Spider-Man.
It's true. Yeah. It's true, and I think one of the things.
Papers and things, whatever.
Well, Spider-Man 2, I think will have a different element of that if the direction that we believe it's going, it comes to fruition. But the Spider-Man games are about traversal. They're about moving and whipping and seeing incredible vistas.
They're like Just Cause.
In many ways, but less dynamic. Whereas like
Spider-Man 18 story is significantly better than a Just Cause game. I want to throw out there.
How dare you? Yeah, you're right.
Absolutely. Yeah, different things, apples and oranges, I think. But
yeah. So Artur Gaming said yesterday in response to this topic, I think the key things are variety of locations in the world feeling alive around you rather than a handful of pre-designed scripted events. He said From Software, the masters. Also Witcher, Skyrim, Red Dead, the same ones we keep.
But Hogue likes
you just gave From Software the masters for the one game that they've done in the open world.
That's what
I think you got to point also to that as a criticism that we offer towards Halo Infinite's open world is it doesn't have a lot of that.
Okay, we're gonna go down a bad
path.
Does it?
I think it does.
Start talking about
the variety of What the quote was: a variety of
Variety of got it right here. Variety of locations in the world feeling alive around you rather than a handful of pre-designed scripted events.
So I feel like the
is-
variety of locations in Halo Infinite is extensive in pre-written areas, but as far as like biomes that are naturally discovered in the open world, I think you can critique it a bit. Now the levels have a lot of variety, but those are the pre-scripted elements. So like I was really using the wording and the verbiage that he used. That's where I'm going with it. Because
I kind of interpreted that Rick liked the pre-scripted. That was like
That was Halo.
his main draw. So like I guess the premise of what makes it good, I disagree with. I just don't think there's too many ways to skin this cat. I can't pin any definitive definition you give me of what makes it good. We will be able to find a game that does all those things completely differently and is still a great game. And also I love Halo Infinite's world, even though you do just shoot Covenant. It's still
I do
so
too,
good.
man.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Peter over at HK says the ones I don't want to leave. He kind of names everything. They have a good story, world variety, good fun stuff to do, and responsive controls. Well, yeah,
For the most part, we want it to be good, and it'll be good.
Funny enough, he says Elden Ring, Red. It goes back to our conversation. He says Elden Ring, Red Dead 1, Witcher 3, Assassin's Creed. Is that God of War? So that's an interesting, because God of War is kind of a hub world. I wouldn't argue that it's
I wouldn't say that game's open world.
GTA 4, HCD. He said not so much. Red Dead 2, Horizon Forbidden West, Ghost of Tsushima, and GTA 5. Interesting.
Just every game. He just likes every video game.
No, he said not as much. Red Dead 2, Forbidden West, Ghost of Tsushima, and GTA 5. So he liked GTA 4 more than 5 from a world perspective. So. And then we got a comment from Nishin on, funny enough, we had an Elden Ring conversation a few weeks ago when it came out on Bitcast. And I know you Breath of the Wild fans aren't going to like this, but he said, hit the nail on the head with Breath of the Wild. I love Zelda games, but was bored to death in Breath of the Wild because farming weapons was a huge turnoff. Farming a bunch of orbs to buy heart pieces, big question mark. Breaks the immersion of going after one after another tough boss puzzle. He said, to be honest, having 100+ shrines with old people giving out orbs is ridiculous, even lore wise. So just sharing the comments that we got. And I agree with them, but I won't harp on it.
Too fast to the Legend of Zelda historical lore.
Yeah, I also think you could make like Hogue said, you can make the same argument for Elden Ring. Like every crypt is exactly the same. If you can fight,
I think Elden Ring has
but you get something meaningful at the end.
Right, that's the.
I don't think you do.
Comment. It's not
absolutely you do. You can literally get things that change your entire build.
I mean, you can. I just don't think. I think most of the optional crypts I discovered, I did it because I wanted to keep exploring crypts, and then at the end I would get one reward, and the reward would be like, I'm never going to use that. That was like
that can happen, but it may be something you use, for, like I said, a different build. Like you may get a talisman that doesn't work with your build, right? And then really, to your point, the crypt did.
Or you get your 19th Spirit Ash that you're never going to use, and you're just like,
and that's their favorite one, right? Is the summonings. But they're neat looking. I agree with. Look, as someone that likes Breath of the Wild better than Elden Ring, I agree with Ains that I think the very first thing they did in their design was, what are the categories of stuff that we can hand you? I mean, like, this is the problem you have with any kind of loot box is, some of them are going to be sprays and some of them are going to be new characters, right? And so you're trying to make sure that people feel fulfilled more when they're opening those kinds of things. I think Elden Ring does a good job, and I think Zelda does a good job. But
you haven't even gotten to MMOs.
That's a whole nother conversation, right?
But there's open world. They're open world though. Most of them.
They are. Yeah.
Elder Scrolls Online,
open world of Warcraft screens. I'm just joking. Yeah.
By the way,
we do.
I want to point out. Bear with me. Pixel Slappa says that hair's thinning, Luke.
Well, I responded. I said I'm on a journey to become Ains. Man, I teach middle school. All right, I'm surprised they're not gray at this point. Everyone thinks I'm 25. I'm 36.
36. Holy crap!
Yeah,
I thought you were younger than me.
No,
I was gonna say 48, but
I'm just immature. It's totally different, guys.
True.
Totally
this is a true story. Ains is 31 years old. He's aged terribly.
In my Oh my God. Michael JM in the chat says certain racing games is open world, so obviously people go to Forza Horizon.
Final Lap
right?
Twin, of course, is what he's referring to there. A noted historical legend TurboGrafx game.
Oh, going back. I love the
Final Lap
TurboGrafx
Twin
game.
is a fantastic game, which has the unique circumstance of being both a racing game and a 2D Pokemon-esque role-playing game in which you have to challenge the 5 racing masters across the world. I highly recommend it if you could find a way to play it.
That's
Yeah,
a
it was
challenge.
the first mix of role-playing and like something else that I wound up playing in my journey to who I am today.
Yeah, he says some racing games integrate open world into gameplay better than others.
Well,
He
sure,
said, like,
Horizon.
Need for yeah, I mean
Horizon.
Horizon's kind of the pinnacle right now, but Need
There's
for
too
Speed
many.
Water.
I can't do this. It's
Well, this is the problem. This is why I'm saying like you can do it well and you can do it poorly. The game publishers on the whole have decided open world's an important checkbox. So you're trying to see if your game can work in that, and some do and some don't. But like you can find it in almost everything. We have everything south of Tetris open world.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wouldn't put it past them to make an open world Tetris. They made a battle royale Tetris. I mean, it could happen.
And it's good. It's actually good.
It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, Travis, you just said in the chat, to your point about Elden Ring, right? Destiny is 99% useless loot.
It is. But I won't defend that. So I defend that across all games. I think that's a bad.
What was that?
I also won't defend Destiny's open world. Destiny's got one of the worst open worlds.
Well, that's kind of where I was going to go next is, someone mentioned God of War. I think it was Peter mentioned God of War, which I wouldn't consider open world, but you do have those games that kind of try to walk that line, right? I think to your point, Rick, around a lot of developers saying, okay, we need to have almost an open world feeling to our game because it's almost an expectation a lot of times now with big 3D games. And God of War seemed to be one of those games that tried to walk that line, right? Because you kind of have this hub world, right? And then you go to the different areas, they're contained, but you can explore freely in their little hubs. And then you come back to this hub world. And a few games have done that well. I think God of War does it extremely well. And that's kind of that borderline experience.
You're just trying to pull out the opinions that are going to get me yelled at. So I'm going to say God of War. It has that hub world.
I want you to elaborate on this actually, because hold on. Hold on. Before you do, OBM, happy Easter to you, OBM, from Air, our brother over there, says, hanging with the kids, but just swinging by to say hi. Look forward to finding out what we can cancel Hogue for later on. Hogue, you're up. Let's talk God of War.
It was 2018 when I said Red Dead Redemption 2 was like my 10th favorite game of all time. I believe God of War was 8th. And God of War, narratively, again, is very repetitious. You're going to circle that lake 100,000 times before you're done. And it's a prologue in search of a story, which I'm hopeful it comes into the second God of War here. It is a series of red herring kind of Ouijas that you're going after the entire game until you get to the end, which is mostly premised on a narrative reveal that is kind of neither here nor there because of the way the character in question has been presented throughout the game. And I like it. Good gameplay, solid characterization, but all before whatever the story would be. It's like all inciting event for 35 hours. And so I like God of War 2018. I do. I'm looking forward to seeing where they go with it because it's extraordinarily anticlimactic and you will repeat yourself a lot. I mean, you're constantly going after the next thing they tell you to find.
I agree with Hogue.
It had to happen.
I agree with them. That's the only criticism he missed is that I also think you fight the same enemies way too often in that game.
You do.
I think they could have used with enemy diversity like a lot, especially boss fights. You fight like the same boss like 9 times.
But they're different colors, man.
They are different colors. I do like the game.
I like the game, but it wasn't my game of the year. That's to your point.
No, Red Dead 2's came in 2018. Come on. But I'm laughing right now because I've had this God of War discussion to a degree with Luke and Joe on Cast Co-op, and I know that Luke and Joe both hold God of War as one of the greatest games of all time, if not the greatest game of all time.
Easily.
And I always tell them, I'm like, it is not. It just
absolutely is. Absolutely is the greatest game of all time.
I'm glad it brings you so much joy, Luke.
If it's not the greatest game of all time, it's in the top 3. Up there with Witcher 3, I believe. Like it is elite creation. It is. It is. It's the best games ever made.
Okay, wait. Before I accept your assertion, Luke, I need to ask you this question.
Oh,
Have you
God.
played only 3 games?
Thank you. Thank you, Travis.
Yeah.
Thank you, Travis.
no.
No,
Because
it's
that would explain it. If he's played 3 games, then that would for sure.
if you were to create a list of the 10 best video games of all time,
I can do that.
Yeah, we do
easily,
that all the
I
time.
think God of War should be in your top 10, without a doubt. And I absolutely think, to me, it's the best game ever made, from the writing, the acting, the visuals, the gameplay, the direction they took a character. There are so many things in that game that you can latch onto as being elite, that to me there are very few competitors in the gaming space that have done it on that level. And
I
more to
agree
the
that
point, you
Very
want
much thinks it's one of the best games of all time. It presents that it feels that way about itself.
I think
I agree with that.
why wouldn't you? And one of the things that I find with the arguments like this, because I realize I'm on defense with this panel, but we tend to hold older games in certain prestige, but games as they evolve should improve upon themselves over time. And I would put Super Mario 3 or World, there's a good debate, also in this top 10 best games of all time element. But God of War is a special game. It is special, and it changed our industry in a lot of ways, as did The Witcher 3 in terms of storytelling versus with elite gameplay. And there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that.
You got to dig into some of this stuff. How did God of War 2018 change the industry?
To me, it allowed a pre-established character to be reinvented in a way that we often equate Breath of the Wild to being. Like we said, Breath of the Wild
Tomb Raider
reinvented.
do that before God of War?
I don't think so. I feel like Tomb Raider took the same character and applied an Uncharted style gameplay to it. It didn't, to me, feel unique and special. And I'm not knocking it. I love the Tomb Raider games, the first 2 in terms of gameplay.
The character in a new light.
I don't feel like it reinvented her in a new light. I think it
Lara
just
Croft is the same from the original Tomb Raider and the new ones.
I don't think that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I don't feel like it truly reinvented.
Okay,
Something about it felt very Uncharted, at least to me. It was just Uncharted.
I mean, those games are quasi semi-open world survival emphasized games, over the shoulder.
Yeah, I'm confused as to the way you're asking it, I guess.
Me and Travis are sitting here the same way.
God of War 2018 deserves special credit, and that's totally fine, for reinventing an existing character in a new light. I'm saying that the Tomb Raider series that Crystal Dynamics put out did that first.
I appreciate your logic. I appreciate your logic. But to me, there is something wholly different about the way Kratos is handled in both writing and in gameplay that is just, it's not the button mashy QTE style elements that his games were known for.
Okay.
So Beast has a comment on that, which is a good one. The real innovation of God of War 2018 was the one-cut cinematics and seamless merging into gameplay animation. The story reinvention is secondary to this.
Which
there
is
is something
style show off. I mean, that's fine that it happened. I didn't get much from it.
Yeah, I think it's one of the reasons people like that game. I think that if it's on your top 10 list, you should play more games. That's my opinion on that.
I like
because and Luke, I'm not one of those guys who says old games are the best. I think one of the best games of all time came out in 2020, and most people haven't played it. I don't think anybody except for me has played it. Half-Life Alyx. But
I've not played it.
We're not all
it's
rich
on VR.
people, Travis.
I know I know that's the problem with that game. You have to be rich to play it. But if you guys played it, you'd probably be like, "Oh yeah, God of War is super overrated."
I would love to play Alex.
Yeah.
I also
come over, Hick. Bring the kids. Come on over, San Francisco.
We're gonna
the funny thing is
game with Travis.
We spent too much. Oh, go ahead, Luke.
I would like to invite the panel and the chat without kind of like pompous rudeness to suggest games that they feel do what I believe God of War does, without it being like a snarky response, because The Witcher 3 and God of War are 2 games in my mind that are just so elite in their genre that they did something special. They did something unique. What other games do you guys feel do that for the industry or for yourself, that if I'm feeling that way about those 2?
Are we talking about open world anymore? Because
God
of War is not even an open world game.
It's not.
I was saying in general.
We kind of talked about hub worlds, and we got in. I dropped the match because I knew how Luke felt about God of War. So, I just would like to say I kind of sit between you guys. I think God of War 2018 is an amazing game. It's one I think is truly, truly well done. But I definitely don't think it's up in the top 10 games of all time. I think it's overrated in that regard.
Wow.
But
I think it's a great game. I would have given that game like an 8 or a 9. Like you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's bad. I just think that when people say it's the greatest of all time, I'm like, Jesus, man. Like,
I'll give it an 8.
come on,
I'll give it
this
an
is
8.
not.
No, to me, if I'm being really negative about God of War, my moods shift on these various things. I would say that it's a continued symbol of Sony taking what was a huge variety of game types and game experiences that they used to offer you and putting them all under in the over the shoulder third person action adventure experience deck. Like that, like Sony has done that with a lot of their studios at this point in time. And so when I'm feeling really negative, it's God of War 2018 is a reinvention in order to match the only thing Sony really does.
That's a bold statement, but I can see where it's coming from. That's for sure. And by the way, there's a reason we call him Mr. Bad Take. And here's exhibit like 37.
Yeah, I could give you a laundry list of like 20 things that are wrong.
True
with God
for
of War.
certain definitions of the word nearly. And if nearly is inclusive of at least 80% flaw, totally fine.
I'll put it in
right.
I'll put it in a way that Mr. Badbit can understand. God of War is nearly perfect as a game in the same way that Luke is nearly perfect as a person.
Wow. Ad hominems from Travis.
No, not
what
ad
the hell,
hominems.
man.
I'm putting it I'm contextualizing it in a way that Mr. Badbit will understand. He'll get it.
Wow.
He'll get that.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. Let me get the Gecko's super chat here because it's on this. He says, biggest innovation in video game storytelling was done by Half-Life. God of War 2018 just reuses those techniques pioneered by Half-Life. So yeah, we're kind of off the topic of open world to Travis's point now, but yeah, I wanted to open that.
One shuttle in a scientific base in God of War 2018. I'd have to really think about it.
I think a lot of people like Gecko, though. If we're back to storytelling, I know that Half-Life and Half-Life 2 in particular kind of get a lot of credit for how they drove that design forward. But
Half-Life's a big deal. I do think it gets a little too much credit for what the actual geography of PC games during those years were. You have some pretty significant leaps in storytelling at the same time, but the way history records itself outside of video games and inside of video games is that you like to find one thing that really kind of coalesces a certain amount of concepts, and Half-Life does do that. It's not undeserving of praise, but there was a lot of beats of evolution happening during the 90s that get to that point. And like I said, Half-Life deserves it, but
yeah, agreed.
There are other games that were doing a lot of stuff similar.
100%. Yeah, I've had that kind of fun conversation before. And our brother Sarko says God of War was special for me because it's rare that game makers make me feel like I could be the main character. Kratos and his journey from monster, quotes, to his reformation hit a chord for him, and he dug that.
It is a great game. I hope nobody's taking that away from me.
I said it was in my top 10 list when we started the conversation for that year.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just said it was 8.
Yeah, and you had Red Dead 2 below it, that's just a problem.
They both made the list.
What's your best game? What's your best game?
So, did you ask me or someone else?
Yeah, you. Yeah.
Oh, like best game in what way?
Well, I think God of War is the best game ever made. Like, I have a feeling about that.
I generally come back to Witcher 3.
Okay.
Generally speaking,
yeah, I think it's a great response.
Witcher 3, when you look at not just open world, right? When you look at aspects of all the aspects of games and what they presented as a package, especially the complete edition, because it has 2 of the best expansions ever made as well. I think Witcher 3 complete is it's hard to think of a game holistically that tops that.
It's a pity we won't be playing any kind of redo of it for the foreseeable future. Speaking of news items.
Yeah. So, but I want to end on that, actually. That's what I was going to ask you guys. Going to close this open world topic, what do you think, and it might just be Witcher 3, but what do you think is the best open world? Let me not say best, because everyone's opinion is different. What's your favorite open world game of all time?
Well, okay, so there's two components to that, Ains. I just want you to clarify, because favorite open world would be about the building of the world. Favorite open world game includes a lot of other concepts.
Favorite game that is an open world game.
Okay. Great.
Yep. Come on.
My favorite game that is open. My favorite game is Arkham Knight, and it has an open world, and that does not mean best. And I want to.
No, that's why I said favorite. Favorite.
I love being a superhero. I love being powerful in games, and I love a world that is immersive. And DC is special to me, and so Arkham Knight let me be Batman in the world of Batman in a way that none of them ever had. And there are plenty of things you can critique in that game, but there are also a lot of things you can just ignore and let it be the game you want it to be. And I adore the world of Arkham Knight. I'm desperate for the Arkham games to have a re-release so I can just play through them for achievements again and see them in next gen. And those are my
cool.
Yeah, I mean, those are my.
That's some high resolution on Arkham Knight, honestly.
It's a incredible world, and if you go back to the retrospectives, there's a lot in that game that people missed because they were so focused on the Batmobile. But there are some incredible things that Rocksteady took time to put into.
I really
so
like
that is my
Batmobile. I think I'm in the minority there. I
loved
really
it
like
as well. I grew to love it, and I grew to love the gameplay things that it gave you. Like you could drive and do these incredible moves and then shoot yourself out and then traverse the city via gliding. That's a cool feeling. So I'm sorry, I'm going too long, but Arkham Knight,
because you mentioned Batman, and of course, like you literally can't talk about Batman for less than minutes at a time.
Okay, you once elaborated on the sniper rifle of Halo, and we had to spend 20 minutes while you unpacked it.
Yeah,
I like this sibling kind of quality here up at the top of the screen. I didn't realize this.
Me and Luke have these. This is why we do shows together.
They're like siblings if one was born 40 years earlier from a different mom. Yeah,
it's an unusual family, but it can happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Couple comments. So Sarko, I know Skyrim came up in many comments. Fatboy says Fallout 3 is his favorite. Also, I want to call out that Cool Kill mentioned the game from a 3D kind of perspective, Mario 64, which was a revolutionary game at the time. Absolutely revolutionary. Absolutely. Yeah, and let me just point out one more. What's we up to? Exhibit like 97 of Mr. Bad Take, Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh,
is his favorite?
Great game,
favorite of all time.
Favorite, man. Yeah.
See, the point just gets proven over and over again.
Ghost of Tsushima is elegant. I like that one.
I know. I love that game too. But.
So I will say this for me. I have like a rotating top 5 depending on my mood. Basically, Witcher 3 is one of those. I am not going to say that's my favorite open world game. I'm instead going to go with the hipster answer that no one knows, I guess, which is Star Control 2, which is very often sitting in my top spot as favorite game, again, depending on my mood. But if you haven't played it, you can get it open source, someplace called the Urquan Masters, open source released from the actual creators of the game. It's maybe a 10-hour play. I cannot recommend it more. It has a dynamic star system that you explore with your ship, and all sorts of things can happen out there, all sorts of surprises, all sorts of secrets, and a tremendous narrative to boot. And a narrative, by the way, that if you do play Star Control 2, you will find is used in pieces and bits and bobs in a number of video games for the 30 years that followed.
Okay. I know it. Yeah, I am not a Star Control fan. I never really got into them, but I know plenty of people who reference Star Control 2 as an all-time great. So interesting. Beast Mode says Grand Theft Auto 4. Anyone? OBM says Elden Ring, right up there since Elder Scrolls. And then 1030 Media Group. 1030 Media Group. I don't remember seeing you before. Good morning to you. Says actually love the open world and abilities in Cyberpunk. So there you go.
Cyberpunk's open world. To be clear, the actual open world, the city, is a testament to their art and their developers. The city in Cyberpunk is crazy.
Yeah,
I guess I haven't spent that much time going around it, but yeah.
Travis, come on, give us one.
I cannot give you my favorite open world game.
Come on, just pick one.
And here's why. There are so many
That's
genres. There's so many genres
do you
and
see
types.
Travis's issues with commitment right now? Do you see them?
I know.
God, dude,
Here comes the 5-minute caveat. Buckle in.
Here we go. I am offended that you even asked the question.
Oh, it's my fault now. It's my fault.
Because here's the
courtroom's out of order.
Ains, I feel the same way about you asking, tell me your favorite open world game of all time, as you would be if I told you, hey, Ains, what's your 67th favorite game of all time? Like, you would have no even idea how to even approach that. You know what I mean? Like,
because that's a stupid question. Your favorite is
yours is stupid too. That's my point.
It's fun. You know that the three of us had no problem picking one for fun. This is not a serious conversation.
There's too many genres. You're talking about sandbox games. You're talking about like, you know what I mean? Like, do I go like the Minecraft route? Do I go? I just can't. I can't even get close.
Name a video game. Just forget Ains's question. Name any video game that pops into your head right now.
Postal 4.
Postal 4 is his favorite open world.
There you go.
You know what? You know what?
We're
Portal
done.
2. Portal 2 is my favorite
Portal
open world
2.
game of all time.
Great. Not at all an open world, but I
Not
like
at all
I
open
like
world, and I chose it.
Thank you, OPM. Yes. Here we go.
I honestly, I think those have the exact same like quantitative merit. So,
Wait. The first and 67th are the same.
Yeah. Why does it matter?
What?
Why does
You're
it matter?
usually
It's just
so
a list. It's just a list. So why does it
familiar with the
matter? What,
concept
1,
of-
67?
Travis, you have an ability to pick apart arguments with finesse that is unrivaled in the industry. But that's
Thank
the
you.
dumbest thing you've ever said.
I'll take issue with that. There's been plenty of other dumb things.
I
He
literally
pays a lot.
like.
He says a lot of stuff.
What is the difference between me asking
Travis,
you first
only-
favorite and your
Only
67?
only you could take a question as simple that is asked
Favorite.
50 times a day. What's your favorite open world game? And turn it into a 10-minute debate about why it's a dumb question. Only you can do that.
Why do the words favorite and best exist?
Fair.
It's just favorite. Like all you had to do was just pick a game you really love.
And
That's open
to
world.
me, the question was too broad. I just,
God.
It's fine,
it-
Travis.
it's
It's
insane.
fine. You know what? This is a perfectly reasonable answer for Travis. This is Travis.
You know what? It'd be a bit like if you asked me, Ains, hey Travis, what is best in life? And I'm just like, I don't even know. Like that's such a big philosophical question. I'm going to be here for hours
Conan
going back
could
and
answer
forth.
that. Even Conan knows the answer to that question.
Conan does know the answer, but I just, you know what I mean? Like we would have to sit here and philosophize. We'd have to go through all the stuff. Like,
why is this a philosophical question? It's just a game.
I love it.
Yeah, but there's philosophy in games, is
This
there
is actually
not?
my favorite thing today, folks. So
Oh my God.
I mean, I'm here like I'm Socrates.
I want
and
Travis
I'm
to
just,
spend the rest of his Bitcast appearances from now until the end of his days refusing to answer any of the topics.
Okay, here we go. Here we go.
Someone clip out, I'm Socrates.
Someone, okay, here. If you give me a week to answer this question, I'll give you an answer.
All right, next week.
I'll answer you next week what my favorite open world
Why
is. I
does
just
it make
can't.
it? Wait, based on your argument just now, why would having a week to answer it make any more sense?
Because it's still an insane question. But if I have a week to ponder it on a mountaintop like a monk, maybe we'll get to the bottom of this incredibly difficult question you've posed.
Wait, is the implication that you're going to spend the week on a mountaintop between?
Yes, I am. I'm going to isolate. I'm going to remove myself. I'm going to live a transcendental life.
Dan would have just said MLB the show, and we would have moved on.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, pretty much.
I can't. It's such a daunting question to me. What is best in life, Ains?
We'll look forward to your 25.
That's not a question.
Hey, Luke, what makes life worthy? What makes life
worthy? That's not a
like,
question either. You're using weird words.
What makes living meaningful?
I have two answers.
Answer
First
on the
one is
spot.
my real one is love. And the answer I wanted to
God.
say to be spiteful was Zack Snyder.
I honestly, reading between the lines, I love the way you answered this, Travis, because I think deep down you know this is being ridiculous, but you're just digging in so deep because you're like that tick that refuses to come out.
This will be a challenge. Let's double down.
Exactly.
Let's just put it this way, Ains. When you asked the question, I felt like a deep anxiety wash over me. Like I was like, I was
How do you
overwhelmed
get
by
through the
question.
days?
I was overwhelmed by the question. It's so much.
Do you wear a helmet like every day?
I don't.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Ains, okay, here. How about this?
Paid to give his opinion.
Ains, if I asked you,
I know you're paid to give opinions all the time. You can't name your favorite game.
But here's the thing: I don't name games in context to one another. I don't go, "Is this game better than this?" I just give a score to that game.
Travis, that's a great question. Have you ever used as a reference point another game when reviewing the game before you?
I use other games as reference points for things that are done well or whatever, but I never make comparisons to one another.
But you make the analysis that one game does something better than another game.
Correct.
So you
Absolutely.
see how if you take this out to its logical conclusion, then you can in fact ordinally rank the games and their doing of things. And one would be best.
Sure. And if you but if you asked me to rank, 7 million things, and
Yes.
then through that to determine the one, then do you not understand how that would be an overwhelming question? It'd be like,
you've got it does not compute. You're that old Star Trek episode. The computer is frying. I can see.
That's right. I'm frying out. You guys have asked me a question. It'd be like if I asked Ains, "Hey Ains, which of your kids is the best?" I mean, you can compare them.
That is not even close to the same question.
Quantitatively, which of your
What
kids
he's
is the
saying
best?
is that he
Ains?
values
Which
Nerf
was the
Legends
best?
as much as
Answer
Witcher
me.
3. Okay, he values Nerf Legends. He values it as much as Witcher 3. It's just too hard to pick between them.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
Hogue,
there are
Star Trek
positive
4.
and
How do
negative
you
aspects
feel?
about all of Ains's kids. So one of them is better quantitatively. I just want him to tell me
The
which.
question.
And
The
I want him to do it
question
immediately.
The question didn't even have the word best. It was what was your favorite?
But I mean, favorite implies best. Come on, it's got it's
not
it's gonna be
necessarily
best for you.
No.
No.
And how does ranking your kids have anything to do with liking a video game?
I'm just saying.
You've taken this further than any point you've taken before, and I love you for it because it's hilarious. But this is, you've gone off the deep end with this one.
I'm just saying.
You went into the guy's kids territory. Like in a different context, you'd be walking a line right now.
I'm just saying, if I asked you that, it might take you a week to come up with an answer. You couldn't answer it immediately on stream.
Oh boy! All right.
I don't know. I've met a lot of parents who have a favorite kid.
They don't broadcast it live on the internet in general.
I have no frame of reference here as a childless man, but yeah.
Well, at least if nothing else, that was the segment I'm gonna have to cut out. At least a part of that, because that went way too long, but we're going to have to cut that out at some point. I Am Socrates is definitely going to be a new GIF, I think, that, we have to use.
You got to get that on a glass with the.
So we have Witcher 3, Arkham Knight, Hogue was Star Control. Thank you. I want to say Star Lancer, also a great game.
So we have to be very clear on this. It's 2 on that.
2.
Star Control 2.
Sorry.
Star Control 1 is not
2,
a narrative game.
And Les Socrates.
And demurs, not applicable.
All right. Let's move on. We got
Gamer.
He said $2 euro super chat for Gecko Gamer. You give games a score, Travis.
I do. And
you fundamentally rank them on a weekly basis.
Correct. And the scope of a game review is how is this one game? Not how is every game that's ever been created ranked to one another and then pick one and create a list.
It wasn't ranked. It was favorite.
Right. IGN never ever ranks things. That is not anything that IGN ever does.
They do. And I've been involved in one of those conversations, and then the entire conversation I was just like, this is extremely hard.
I want your version of that conversation in the IGN back offices or Zoom call to be exactly what this was for us just now.
But here's the thing. When they did it, the IGN was, what are the best 25 PC games you could play right now? And as soon as we started the conversation, everybody was like, all right, I know that's an insane question, so here are the rules. So they made rules. It has to come out in the last 10 years. It can't be longer than 10 years. Okay, that cuts off a huge part of the list. And then they did all these other things to kind of narrow it. And I was like, all right, this is starting to make sense to me. But, just without any conditions.
I'm reaching out to Context at IGN right now to say, please assign Travis a task of the 50 greatest open world games of all time in order, ranked, please.
Oh my God. I could do it. It would just take me longer than 15 minutes on a live stream with you to kind of figure it out. It's just too little.
There are caveat words, right? Like, I know we've been on the stream together a lot. You could say, I'm not positive this would hold forever, but right this second, gun to my head, this is my answer. I think I caveat basically everything I say on this stream.
Yeah.
I said the same thing when I said Witcher 3. I said, holistically, typically, probably Witcher 3.
Absolutely.
When I said Star Control 2, I said, well, oftentimes I say Witcher 3, but I'm in the mood today to say Star Control 2.
Yeah.
I'm not committed to that. I'm not wedded to it. Nobody
favorite things are all based on mood. Favorite things are all...
Just give me 30 more seconds.
Sarko says, in odd news, IGN just released an opening for a game reviewer.
Here's the thing. I take issue with anybody who says that game reviews are not comparing them to other games. They're telling you how that game is. And somebody said your game, somebody in the comment, I was going to reply to him. I think I said that he was wrong and that didn't have time to elaborate. He said that your reviews mean nothing because I can't compare them to other games and other scores. That's not true at all. IGN reviews, if I give you a 7, I'm saying your game is good. If I said it was 8, I'm saying it's great. So 7 would by mean good, not great. But I'm not saying it's compared to this game, it's just
I will
the
back
context
up
of
this
that.
position. I back up that position when people see remakes that are clearly better in frame rate, get a lower review than the ones before because gaming has moved on. I'll back all that up, but you still need to say a game name, Travis.
Fine. I'm gonna say Morrowind. I'm gonna say Morrowind. There we go. You got something out of me. Morrowind.
Long-legged monster beast.
And let me tell you why it's one of my favorite ones. It's because the world is a super weird fantasy.
Weird.
It
and
is
you and I agree on this.
It is sort of Elden Ring like in how much it does not care if you see all of it. It doesn't really give you a path or anything. It's just it takes you a long time to kind of understand it, but it's so in depth and so well built that you could spend hundreds of hours in it and still not see everything. And the fact that it was made so long ago and still holds up as an open world, I will put that up there. It's going to be one of my favorites.
That took 30 seconds. Why was that so hard?
Felt good. It felt
was
good,
hard.
Guys.
It was hard. I mean, it was like pulling teeth.
You cannot get rid of Travis's neuroses. This is great. Continues to be great. Travis, you do you, okay, bud?
Dude, he's all flustered. He's sweating. His hair's disheveled.
Dude. It is like you asked me to choose a kid. That's how I feel. I just want you to know that. It's the same.
And that's how I know you've never had kids.
Yeah, I was gonna. That is the
or maybe it's how you know that I like games that much. Maybe that's what it is.
Oh my god! All right. Well, we didn't have a lot of news this week, but that turned into a great segment. But yes, that was a journey.
That was a journey. I'm sorry, guys. You had to drag me kicking and screaming to give an answer.
You know what? That was the best.
I love that after that entire 15-minute spiel or 20-minute spiel, you eventually just said a very normal and reasoned answer, like the three of us did immediately.
They're all going to be normal no matter what answer I gave. It's just that I was dealing with I was having a crisis of identity of which one I would choose. That's just
I love it.
It's difficult.
But see, you could have said Morrowind. You could have said Just Cause 2. Nothing changes.
None of us.
That doesn't change anything for you.
It changes for me, Ains. Once the words leave my lips, it changes for me.
Do you guys? Do you ever have like a favorite game, but it has to be played in a certain way or certain system? Like I'm thinking about like.
Are you really going to continue this right now?
No, right.
Is this what we're doing?
Sorry.
Moods matter. Moods do matter.
Fair.
Like I'm not in the mood for Witcher 3 right now.
Also, difficulty. We didn't even get there. Some open world games have different difficulties, and
Very true. Yeah, very true.
This might be my favorite segment that I've done so far.
I haven't laughed that hard in a while. That was good. All right, we'll jump over to just a couple things to discuss real quick. So we'll just call out that CD Projekt Red announced this week kind of their not a roadmap, but basically kind of on their earnings call. They talked about the things, that they're working on, but continuing to improve Cyberpunk. We knew that. Cyberpunk expansion is being worked on heavily right now. They're going to share more details on it later this year. It'll arrive next year. They obviously have the new Witcher title coming. I didn't realize this. Maybe I missed it, but the studio out of Boston named Molasses Flood, which created The Flame in the Flood a few years back, if you remember that kind of smaller game, they're owned by CDPR now, and they are apparently working on a game based on an IP that CDPR owns. So that's coming. They have a new single-player Gwent spin-off game that is apparently in dev, and then a few other smaller things. They also announced at this time that Witcher 3 has passed 40 million units sold, so making it one of the best-selling games of all time. And Cyberpunk is now over 18 million units sold.
But look at that December 2020. I mean, Cyberpunk has not been flying off the shelves after December 2020.
They did 14 million at launch.
Yeah, in the first week, I think, right?
Yeah. So they've done 4 million since then, which is still impressive. But when you kind of compare to what it could have been and compare to Witcher 3 and other things, obviously, but Witcher 3 is also coming up on 7 years old. Witcher 3 is now over 40 million.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And we'll continue to, it's continuing to sell well. But just, impressive there. I love that they're continuing to work on Cyberpunk. We're going to get that expansion. I hope it goes without saying. I hope that, they continue to expand what's capable in that world. We'll see.
They also delayed their Witcher 3. I don't know what they call it.
Update for new gen console update. Yes, they did. It was being worked on by Saber Interactive's Russian studio, and so they pulled it back from that studio and are bringing it in-house into Poland in CDPR's main studio. And they said because of that, it's going to be delayed out of second quarter. They did reaffirmed because people didn't read the details of why they pulled it out. You know, they didn't understand why it was being delayed. Context again is important.
But that's another management kind of question for CDPR. I mean, Witcher 3's update was supposed to be before Cyberpunk's. Yes.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
No, it wasn't.
They changed the order.
There's no way to find out, guys.
In their update a year and a half ago or whenever. No, the Witcher 3 was going to be first.
Well, they said we're working on this, but when they gave their official timeline, it was Cyberpunk first quarter, Witcher second quarter.
In one of their roadmaps that was at the end of last year, that's what they announced.
Yeah.
That flipped. That was notably flipped from the last time they had talked about it.
Well, again, they said they were working on it, but
I got 17 videos on CD Projekt Red roadmap.
Yeah, you could certainly be right, but all I was saying was I don't remember them giving a specific time frame for Witcher 3's update until they put out the roadmap at the end of last year. If they did, then I forget.
No, they did the quarter 1, quarter 2 thing at the end of last year.
Yes.
Witcher 3 was supposed to be first. Like, if you think about what those big pictures were and the lines that they had, Witcher 3 was going to be first.
Okay.
It didn't make it out that way. Yes, there was a minor international situation that developed. It is totally understandable for what happened there. But again, in my heart, I say, well, why are you prioritizing your Cyberpunk over your Witcher? You got one crown jewel and you got one that's not. What are you doing?
So we'll see what happens. They did come out and say like it's not in development hell or whatever other, people are speculating. We'll see. I just hope it's substantial, right? Like if they take this long, like year and a half or whatever, and they come out and they just say, okay, it's in 4K now and it looks good. Like, come on. I hope it. Yeah, I know. I'm just hopeful. But anyway, let's talk about something more interesting, which is that we got
Travis's favorite game.
No, we did get details this week. We talked about season 2 for Halo Infinite last week, but we got details on a little more of what's coming from a Battle Royale perspective.
Battle Royale, yeah.
And so this comes out of several kind of leaks and Infinite, data mining and all this stuff that's happened over the past few months. And then Jez kind of doubled down and did an article on this, tying it back to Certain Affinity. And Certain Affinity kind of having this deepening relationship with 343 that they announced this week. But apparently this is called Project Tatanka. Certain Affinity has been collaborating with 343 on this for apparently 2 years, according to Jez. So a long time now, since prior to Infinite's launch. From the leaks and what Jez says is that he's not entirely sure it's a BR in the same sense we think of it. Like not a direct correlation to what you would expect out of Fortnite, PUB, Apex, etc. However, it is kind of a larger mode, individual Spartan standing, as we saw last Spartan standing previously. It does have a closing ring, so for all intents and purposes, we're looking at this as their Battle Royale mode, and it should release sometime. The plan is in season 3 or 4 for Halo Infinite, which, if you map that out, will take you to late third quarter to beginning of next year. So sometime in that
3-month seasons after this one. Okay.
Yeah. So season 2 is May to July, and then you've got August to October and so on, so into January. So we will see. I'm excited about this. I know the Halo community is torn on Battle Royale. I've said from the beginning, and I think Travis, I know Luke, we've all talked about this. I'm big on it. I love this. The more modes, the better, especially with Infinite sandbox and mechanics. So what I really wanted to ask here is, as you think about what could be a Battle Royale in Halo Infinite, what do you want to see out of it? What would be, what's something in this mode that you would really interest you and kind of make it interesting in the Halo world?
ODST drops, weapons dropping in the way they kind of do now in Big Team Battle. I think that'd be really cool. To see like the ability to call in different vehicles to augment your experience would be really cool. And unapologetically, I would love a third person mode where you can see the customizations you've put on your Spartan. One of my favorite things in Halo, doesn't matter which version, is when you mount a turret or you do something where you can see your Spartan. I think that's really cool. And it would offer some gameplay differences to the traditional Halo formula, which I think is needed. BR should be something that they prioritize even ahead of, and I mean this wholeheartedly, and bring whatever hate you have. This should be prioritized ahead of co-op and Forge. it needs to happen. Like put that BR in there. I want to see them playing with all the things in the Halo sandbox, from dropping things in, ODSTs, enemies, PvE. Do it. What you got, Trav?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think we don't need a third person mode because you'll be seeing your character plenty since you'll be watching from the kill cam most of the time.
Got me.
So I think we're good there. But I don't know, man. I think I told Ains and Luke that I'm sort of meh on a battle royale for Halo, just because I think the game design doesn't really match what a battle royale is. Like, Halo is designed as an arena shooter, and I think it does that super well. And everything about it is designed to be an arena shooter. And so when it tries to do these other things, it kind of seems like, you know, the kid that turned in something unexpected for his homework assignment, and he was like, well, I tried something new, and, you know, it doesn't really meet the requirements of what they were supposed to turn in, you know? So I do think that there's so much they need to build in Halo to make Infinite a successful game as a service, which is what they want to do, that this seems like a completely unnecessary distraction. And I understand that it's a different team building it, but that team could also be working on content for Halo Infinite, and it needs it, right? And
I think it's the necessary distraction.
I think it is absolutely not. I think, if anything, Halo Infinite's launch and the fact that it was super successful proves that you don't need a battle royale. I mean, it was like a very successful launch for Halo Infinite. It was, people said, you know, the multiplayer was great, people were into it. Their one complaint was that after a month they were like, well, we need more content, and the 343 wasn't ready to do that. So I think they should probably be using this other studio. Is it Certain Affinity that's working on it?
Yes.
I think Certain Affinity should be like Bungie uses its auxiliary studios, or the ones that it used to have, working on content to come in tandem with the main team. And I think that stuff like co-op, stuff like Forge, stuff like map packs, and other content coming out in other game modes that are part of the core thing would be better suited. And then my question about Battle Royale is kind of the formula to Battle Royale has like RPG elements built into it that I think Halo doesn't have, and that it would be weird for them to add on. Like the whole progression of upgrading your armor doesn't really make sense for a Spartan. The progression of upgrading your weapons doesn't really make sense for the sandbox, seeing as they kind of just have a couple weapons and they all are pretty well balanced. And then the other question is, like, if I drop and I have a BR, is it really just like whoever's best at shooting, and it loses kind of like that randomness and exploration and like loot game that's kind of like a core part of being a battle royale. So I have a lot of questions about if that formula can even work in Halo. I have questions about their priorities in terms of the content they're working on. And when it comes out, and it sounds like it's going to, I'm sure I will play the heck of it. I'll probably like it, but I have a lot of concerns about this as a Halo fan that I don't know, just seems misplaced priorities.
I have a lot of comments to add.
I do too, but I want to know Travis's experience level with BRs, and which ones, if you don't mind.
I've played all of them. I played a little bit of Fortnite. That one's not really for me. I liked Apex. I played a lot of Apex. That's like a, more of a first person one.
He said Apex, I think.
I said Hyperscape.
Oh, Hyperscape. Nice.
Yeah.
I've played PUBG when that was, the original one back in the day. So I've played a lot of them, and I do enjoy it as a genre. I just think that genre doesn't necessarily really jive with Halo. And I get what some people are saying, like, what are you talking about? The world is totally, it's got, you could drop in and a drop pod and like all the stuff. But to me, it's like, what is the goal of Halo? To make an awesome, shooter campaign, integrate an arena sandbox shooter, kind of like a competitive multiplayer. And I just think this is really out of scope. So.
Badbit made a good point about Warzone. That happened, and it shows that it can work. And I think he's right when he makes that point, because it was not originally. It was more arena based. It was more TDM. It was very different than BR, but the mechanics, the engine, the feel can work. And I think you could make a Halo version of that. I've talked a lot.
Warzone now exists because Activision put every single developer on making stuff for Warzone. That is the only thing they're making right now. So they are vastly bigger than 343. The question is, are they going to be able to support either their multiplayer, their campaign, or their battle royale to the extent that Travis suggests, and I think he's right, they would need to do so. So, I mean, it is a battle of resources. It is a discussion on those points as well, because Activision Activision pulled everything to support Warzone.
Warzone's their moneymaker.
Yeah.
It is now. It is
billions
now.
of dollars.
But I mean, like,
Yeah, and if this ends up feeling like an add-on that also isn't supported, then they've just recreated their problem twice. Now they have two things that don't have enough content. You know what I mean?
I think all of us agree on that front. On that front of right, content is key, and we saw season 2, and we talked about that last week, like I said. But I think that it's clear, like we said last week, that 343 understands the content concern. I think it's clear they understand that, and they're driving towards that. Whether I think it's to be seen whether they can release this mode as a fully featured kind of fantastic mode and fully support it along with continued season content that's interesting and extensive. I think your guys' point and concerns there are absolutely valid.
well, Warzone has the same problem that I think Luke properly identified, which is the third person is easier to monetize than first person. And Warzone has seen this in spades. And they've figured it out with various things that they can do that Halo might not be able to match, which goes to Travis's point. And I would love it if there were an awesome Halo Battle Royale that I really enjoyed. I think fundamentally you're the last at the table right now. Halo games are different unless you're going to ditch some of the Halo staples, whether that's, shielding or how it's going to play. You're not going to feel like what people are playing right now. And to be truthful, if I'm being glib, Fortnite put in a Halo mode before Halo could put in a Fortnite mode, and Fortnite even has that advantage at this point in time.
So, okay, there's a couple things I want to tackle. So, one, and I talked about this earlier in the week, and I know many of us have talked about this, is we often have the habit, and we did this last week too, of comparing to Fortnite and comparing to Apex and comparing to Warzone and things, right? Those are games with years behind them now.
But they're in the market, and that's
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the reason that we've seen Infinite kind of drop to the player counts has dropped recently is exactly what we all said, right? Is they just haven't delivered the content, and there's more interesting things or newer things to go experience right now. But I wanted to speak specifically about Battle Royale as a methodology. Like, is this a mode that'll work in Halo? Because I'm definitely on the positive side here in thinking it will. So you touched on one thing I thought was interesting as you were saying it, Travis, which is fundamentally in like games like PUBG, right, or Apex or those games in general, you're looking for loot and you're kind of leveling up after every drop, right? And there's this scale of loot and scale of weaponry and scale of armor that doesn't necessarily tie into what a Spartan or even an ODST would be. And I think one of the ways I've thought about how they can overcome that is they did that in Halo 5 and they did it quite well. So I was imagining, and again, I'm coming from a very positive perspective and assuming that, this is more of what I'd like to see. But what I was envisioning, right, is if you take that kind of open world design that you have in Halo Infinite's campaign, but instead of just using that blank kind of canvas, you incorporate classic Halo map design across that space, right? So like an area, you know how most BRs obviously have all these different key points, right, that you can land in, et cetera. And they have certain design aesthetics that are key to the map on that point. Wouldn't it be great if a part of this open world, this BR world, was Blood Gulch, right? And a part of it was a lockout tower. And a part of it was
Warzone. That's the Warzone mentality.
Exactly. The same model, right? Part of it was Valhalla, because immediately then you have recognizable kind of nostalgic feel for Halo players as it is, right? Plus, it also creates a wide variety of combat scenarios that you can get into, which BRs need, right? But from a weaponry standpoint, I think you have a template for Halo 5 with the rarity weapon scale leading up to legendary weapons like Linda's sniper rifle and Kelly's shotgun and these things that you can find. Bring in the Halo lore to go with your weapon upgrades that you can find would be very interesting.
Halo 5 did that with scalable weapons with the packs.
That's exactly what I just said, Luke.
What I meant to say was I was agreeing with you.
Yeah, so I was just saying. So because Halo's Warzone and Halo 5, that's what you did, right? With the cards and you got those upgraded weapons. Mm-hmm. And then I think from a Spartan perspective, would you guys want to see something like they did in Halo Infinite's campaign where you can find upgraded shields, upgraded, tossable shields plus your armor shield? You have maybe you have the grappling hook at launch. Maybe you don't. Maybe you can find the grappling hook. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there. But my point is that I think there's ways that you can incorporate the typical BR design of upgradable players and loot into the Halo sandbox, because they kind of have a template of how they could do that on their past couple of games. So that's one major point I wanted to make.
Yeah, I think those are all fair points. I would love to see what their vision of it is. I still think that building it is a misplaced use of efforts when they're currently suffering from, the content drought on their existing game as a service.
True, but I think you even made the point last week, which is where they are now in this curve of release, right? Is they're still very early.
Yep, and it's normal. Totally.
And it's normal. And again, maybe I'm being overly positive, and that's fine if I am, and we'll obviously monitor this over the next several months. But I think that they will get to that curve, right? They'll get to the cadence where their seasons will be 3 months instead of 6. That's huge. Where they have multiple new maps and modes that are introduced with each season. That's your arena and your big team, your core Halo experience, right? Then Forge is going to come along, and everything we know about Forge and what it does, if you look at Halo 5 as an example, right? You get your custom games browser. You get the Forge maniacs out there who love custom games and custom building, right? And you allow players to matchmake in custom games. That's very important, to be able to jump into games with other people globally, right? Because now you have your arena and big team. You have your open sandbox where players can just goof off and do whatever weird thing they can come up with, right? That's what's going to be Forge and custom games. And then from what we read is that the reason they're going down this BR route, which I think Luke was pointing to, is that there is an entire community of streamers and gamers, and it's a big community that only play Fortnite, Apex, or the ones we've talked about, Warzone, because Battle Royale is a huge subsection of the kind of shooting, first-person shooter / streaming.
They're trying to go where the money is. I mean,
community now, yeah. So they're trying to do everything now. The bigger question, of course, is can they do that, and can they do it well? That's the question.
Should they? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So is the thing.
Should and can are two different things, right?
Yeah.
Should, I believe they should. Yes. Can is yet to be seen.
Yeah. To me, I don't.
You're saying they shouldn't, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like not core to what they're trying to build. Because everything about Halo Infinite is like arena shooter,
Yeah, and the mechanic, we've talked at length about that.
Yeah, we love that.
I think I love it to death. I think the mechanics are second to none in that space. But think about the fun we had playing in Infinite's open world, right? And the shooting mechanics and the grappling mechanics and the scalable, like putting that into a multiplayer experience, I have to think would be pretty incredible.
I certainly see it. I worry about them bloating their product before they've managed to master that content delivery pipeline.
That's a fair concern.
Agree.
Yeah,
it's a fair concern.
That's why I said, like, should they? I think they should. Can they is a whole different question. Because they don't. I don't think any of us are 100% confident or even high percentage confident that they're going to do all of these things well and in a timely manner.
Yeah.
Not without more butt shots.
Yeah. They'll probably do it well, but timely manner. Yeah.
It's a whole different question too. Yeah. It's a whole different question.
The only helpful aspect of that is there's no competition. There's no competition right now. It's the only thing that's going to allow them to return unscathed is there's no competition right now.
You mean like launching? You mean like
launching? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry. Very good caveat to put in there.
Yeah, because Fortnite's crushing it, right?
Fortnite?
Yeah.
Sorry, no new games are arriving that would compete with its updates. That's what I meant.
And so one of their competitors might end up being one of their products as well, Warzone.
Oh, which is hilarious, right? To think about that long term.
I see what you mean.
Kind of thing. Arvin says in the chat, mode was already in development, but it was bricking Xbox Ones. So they asked Certain Affinity to work on it while they managed other important things. Probably, going back to
make it not Xbox One.
That's the other question, right? Yeah, that's the other question is, do you make this series and PC only? Depends on how they obviously develop it and what resources
it would be a
it's pulling
different
from.
product, so they could even do it without
different app.
That was in the report as well, is that this will be similar to Warzone and Call of Duty, as you have a hub, but this is a standalone thing.
Cool.
Yeah. Which is also how you monetize it separately too. To hope
the same hope I had for the show, which is a different discussion, but if it gets people into Halo enjoying what I love, rock on. You know what I mean? I love Halo the same way I love Star Wars. And there's a lot of ways to enjoy Halo and a lot of ways to enjoy Star Wars. And if it gets more people interested, I don't care.
That's the thing too. If it injects new life, there may be people that exactly what you're saying. There may be people that will come over and play Halo Infinite for the first time because it's a BR and that's what they like, who haven't touched Halo before.
Right.
Just don't give up on your original vision and your original project, please.
I
That's
agree.
fine.
Completely.
I can see this being a runaway hit and then them being like, all right, Halo's no longer an arena
hello,
shooter.
Vanguard. Call of Duty Vanguard says hello.
Yeah.
Grand Theft Auto model. Yeah.
Or Grand Theft Auto. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, we'll see. We've all been kind of speculating on that for a while. But it's going to be interesting to watch unfold. I'm interested in season 2. I'm excited to get back to it. But I think season 2, over the next few months, we're going to see how adept 343 has become at kind of solving some of these issues. I think internally, it's fair to say, of content delivery, right? We're going to need to see what they can do over that 3-month season to keep players engaged and how quickly they can kind of pivot to being ready for a meaningful season 3 launch as well. These next few months are going to be enlightening, for lack of a better word, of how 343 is going to drive forward, in my opinion. I had to add that for you, Travis.
Yeah, it's
Thanks,
important.
man.
Yeah. In my opinion, you're right. Definitely.
Did you guys see the Paul Tassi, in my opinion, thing that blew up on Twitter this week?
I did. I defended.
Yeah,
him.
and I was just like, bro, this is what I'm talking about. In my opinion, it's a being of our existence.
Yeah.
If you didn't see it, basically he didn't put "in my opinion" at the headline of his article that was clearly an opinion, and then people were mad at him, like, "Why are you stating this like it's fact?" And he was just like,
"It's not even that." The freaking the people came out and says, "You don't speak for all of us." It's like,
no kidding. Yeah.
I love when people they say that. You don't speak.
It was about the Halo show, by the way.
Obviously. Yeah,
his headline was "The Halo show is in trouble," or it's it's got
not
issues.
Going great. I believe is
not going great is what he said. Yeah. How dare you? How dare you speak for me?
I thought that was a reasonable, understated opinion he put for his headline.
Yeah,
but who am
I?
Maybe
not even that controversial, really. Yeah,
maybe the people saying you don't speak for me work at Forbes. That would make sense.
It's another Forbes staffer.
Yeah, another Forbes staffer really upset that his outlet's speaking for him. That would make sense to me.
Eric Kane comes out of the woodwork. It says, "Shut up, Paul."
I love this show. It's going great.
Yeah, you know what's funny, guys, and we're gonna save kind of episode discussion. Dan's not here. I know you said you haven't watched episode 4 yet, and we'll kind of move on. I know Hogue was moving on too, so I'll save that for future episode when we have a couple.
All I got was a DM that said I missed more male nudity, and I said, you know what? I didn't actually miss it. Thank you, though.
So we'll save that. But it is funny. Don't you guys think it is funny how, I mean, it was Halo, so I always think that there was going to be a broad opinion, on the show to begin with, no matter how good it was. But it is crazy how drastically different opinions on the show are.
It is so far afield from what I think of when I think of Halo. I can't even, they're not even in the same.
Yeah, I know you're all the way over here. And I talk to people every day that are all the way over here. I'm somewhere in the middle, but it is weird to me how vast the opinions are. I guess
I never want to take anything away from anybody. I'm glad if you like it. I cannot imagine the thought process gets you there. Honestly, just sitting here as I am myself.
If you would have told me that Master Chief would be in a total of 1 firefight by the end of episode 4, I would have laughed at you. Like, it's crazy. There's been other characters who've been in more firefights than him. What's her name?
I don't think there's a war going on, as far as I can tell.
It's crazy. The show's really lost me, but I'm still gonna watch it. I'm watching it every week. Like, basically, I do it like on Saturday night because I remember I have to have watched it for this show. That's kind of been my MO.
I haven't watched episode 4. As I said before, I have gotten a lot of DMs begging me to watch it. So, I don't know.
I actually watched it early. I had someone send it to me this week, so I watched it on Tuesday. And I don't know. I'm okay with it.
Go nuts.
It's funny that you describe yourself as the middle because on this panel, I'm the middle. We've got Hogue and we've got you, and I'm the middle. It's weird.
One more thing I just forgot to mention. I'm sorry, because Beast Mode mentioned in the chat too, is about this Halo BR. So someone asked, is it a standalone mode? Yes, it's supposedly, from what we know, is a standalone mode. Probably free to play. You could probably expect the same type of thing we've seen out of others in this space. But also that they're developing it to be able to run all sorts of different variations. So even like team-based BRs, multi-squad BRs, things like that. So like 4 teams of 20, that type of thing. So that could be further interesting too, and maybe tie a little bit more back to the Halo feel. But I forgot to mention that. So, yeah, well, we'll talk about the show more in the future. So a couple things to announce before we close out. So we are on episode 199 today, and guys, as always, if you're tuning in and joining us, thank you so much. We've had a lot of people. Well, I mentioned this before, but a lot of people that watch on YouTube after the show is live. So really appreciate you guys. Feel free to leave us a comment. I'm trying to do better at bringing up comments. We did it today a little bit from the prior week that we can talk about. So if you can't catch us live, you can still feel like you're included as part of the show. So please do that.
Leave your complaints, your anger, any way you want. Engagement is key. YouTube loves it. So if you've got some thoughts about me, Travis, anybody else, leave them there. Absolutely. 100%.
Dan, we'll be back in the next episode. There will be no Bitcast next week. We are taking a week off. I will actually not be in town. We are taking a 2-week gap before we do episode 200, which is going to be a special episode. It's going to be less about the news and more about kind of fun gaming moments. I don't know how Travis is going to get through it because we're going to talk about favorite things,
Just don't
give him the question ahead of time.
Definitive, man. I need to have some processing time for it.
But
I'll write you up some disclaimers you can read on air, Travis.
There
Thanks,
you go.
man.
Yeah, we'll put it up in the corner.
I really do need Hogue on my legal team for sure.
So episode 200 will effectively be Sunday, this normal time, just 2 weeks from now, which is May 1st. So May 1st, that Sunday morning, we're going to have a lot of guests swinging by, that from other shows and other outlets, just coming by to hang out with us briefly and chat and have a good time. So we'll have some prizes to give away as well. It's just going to be fun. So looking forward to celebrating with you guys on episode 200. It's mind-boggling to me that we're almost at episode 200, but it's never been a better time, honestly. Love where the Bitcast is at. Love you, chat, joining us every week. The community that tunes in, you guys are awesome. So
and we're growing. So if you love this content, share it with a friend. Bring them in. Episode 200 is going to be a great time.
Yeah, good point. Yeah,
Sorry,
please do.
Going to grift mode. I've been grifting a lot this past week. So.
No, he's right though. I mean, it's great to be starting to see 1,000 views on YouTube for Bitcast, and I already mentioned a couple of weeks ago about how many people are tuning in and listening. It's the biggest we've ever been, and continue to grow. And it's great, man. It's really great interaction. And again, fantastic chat today. And again, it's just a good community. There's no one that we have that gets out of line, right? We're all just having a fun conversation. So it's a lot.
We get out of line all the time, but it's in a friendly manner.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
So anyway, should be a lot of fun. And then this week on Season Gaming, I've got the next Patreon exclusive conversation will go live later this week. It's with a big person in the industry, which I'm excited to share. I'll be sharing that early this week, but look for that.
That's me?
He said a big person, Travis. Don't worry about it.
I said a big person. You and I have already done a one-on-one, by the way.
That's true. We already did. That's right.
That's actually on the channel if you want to check it out. But if you enjoy the content we do, I'll just check out our Patreon. There's some cool things that we're doing out there. And then Steve for Season Gaming will be at PAX East later this week as well, and doing a lot of coverage there for us. So look for some unique kind of interviews and game views and things like that later this week on the site as well. All right, let me jump over. Luke, thanks for hanging out with us today, dude. Appreciate you stepping in with Dan being out of town. And the conversation, as always, God of War is not one of the best games ever made, but we'll let you go on that one. Anyway, man, Luke, where can we find you, man?
You can find me on all your podcast services. The Xbox Expansion Pass is the weekly show that I host there. The Lohr Landing interview went up last week, and the Shredders interview is dropping this afternoon. So you guys are more than... What's that?
The Lohr Landing stuff made some noise, I saw.
We talked about that at the top.
I apologize for missing that. I was,
Oh, no, you're fine.
However the journalists of the world treated it, you should be very proud of getting messages out there and being seen. So I wanted to say that.
Thank you, man. That means a lot coming from me. I really appreciate that. Thank you. But yeah, the Shredders interview drops today, and then find me on Twitter at InsipidGhost, and keep an eye on Season Gaming. I have a print interview coming up soon.
That's all I can say. Is
trademark.
I just wanted to get. I want to get it back before
I love it.
All right, Rick. Thanks for taking time out of the Easter with the family today to hang out as always.
We're going to be doing more Easter after this. As I said, Easter Ace Attorney is a thing. that will be happening at the Hogue household.
Easter
But
is
yeah,
returning.
so
I love it.
with all the extra time I saved from watching Halo this past week, I've been covering a lot of the first big public potential hostile takeover fight of the modern era, and Elon Musk fighting Twitter, and it's only going to get more fun and interesting from there. So if you like that, we've already got 4 or 5 videos in the playlist because there's a lot going on there. It will get even more interesting as we go. Come join us on Virtual Legality. If you don't like that, if you're interested in a little bit more salacious celebrity stuff, I'm actually helping cover the live streams of the Depp Heard trial on a channel called Legal Bites, which I would recommend checking out there. I've been on for like 31 hours, I think, in the last week. So I am commenting on Johnny Depp and Amber Heard pretty regularly. So you can go check out that. And then in the meantime, after that, I'm, practicing law, running a law firm, doing legal documents. You're not that interested in that. So come out to youtube.com/HogueLaw, Virtual Legality. If you want more of my wonderful takes that I'm sure you agree with entirely 1000%, I'm also at Twitter at HogueLaw, same spelling.
Travis, end us out.
Yeah, despite what Ains thinks, I actually am a big guy in the games reviews world. I found out this week I've written more reviews for IGN than any other reviewer. So I just want if you want
I think that's awesome. Why did you say despite what Ains thinks?
Because you said you're interviewing a big person in the industry. Remember?
Yeah, but
it was a callback.
Context towards you.
I know, I'm joking.
It was a callback. See, I set him up because I told him that you weren't. I implied.
Yeah, I was just joking, guys.
Too many people involved.
All right. The point is, you can read my reviews on IGN.com. And tomorrow morning, I have at 7 a.m. Pacific a review of Postal 4, No Regrets, going live that you can hate watch along with me. And then in May, I'll have my review of Trek to Yomi once that's done. And yeah, I've also just been creating a bunch of content. I've got a preview for the new Outriders content. Has that been announced? I can't remember. Anyway, I've got forget I said that. I've got a preview coming out. I got a preview coming out. I got some other stuff I've been working on. So you can find all that at IGN.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at TieGuyTravis. I also did a show on Monday with Colin Last Stand, Defining Duke, where I talked about pay and compensation in the freelance space with games writers and content creators. This is an issue that is close to my heart and that affects me because I am a happily and by choice a contractor for IGN, and so only get paid for the work that I do. And so if you want to check that out, you can find that online. I think that might be behind their Patreon paywall, but
did you say it was Ultimate?
It's Ultimate, yeah.
Yeah, it's a paywall.
Ultimate. Yeah, so it's behind a paywall. But
popular enough, he'll pop it out.
There you go, and hopefully it'll be popular enough. I really liked that conversation. I went into the call with 3 people who were basically against me. They were all like pretty upset about the IGN tweet of $20.
I was going to ask if that was a precipitating event. Was the news? It
was.
The news
and we talk about the tweet as like the kickoff for the episode. And so basically there was a tweet from IGN about how much they pay their news writers, and a lot of people were upset about it. So they decided to do a show. And I basically put my foot in the door and said, hey, put me in this show because I'm actually a contractor for IGN. And then very quickly turned all 3 of those opinions mostly around. I was just like, look, this is the way it works. And kind of just went in with my informed guy as somebody who used to write news as a contractor. But it was a really great conversation either way, and you should listen to that. That's all I've got to shill for.
We need more of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's actually funny. So you can get Travis on paid content on Defining Duke Ultimate over at Last Stand. I'm also on paid content this week at Sacred Symbols Plus with Colin, talking about Activision and law. So yeah,
nice. Hell yeah.
You can pop over to our apparently sister site. Who knows?
Cool.
Ains, you've been on their stuff too, right?
Yeah, a couple times. Yeah. So
nice.
Yeah,
good big happy family.
Yeah, good content, good guys, and good topics. Honestly, I really do appreciate the topics they cover. And what I was about to say, Travis, is it's good for someone like you to speak up on that kind of topic because that tweet about IGN's pay rates for hourly or content, whatever it was, it of course blew up. Goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the the show with Luke's thing, right? Blows up, but there's a lot of context to provide there, and someone like you has actual experience with it. It's good to hear from.
If you want to know why media companies are so damn cagey about telling you a thing about what they're going to pay you, that's the reason. That's all what happened.
Exactly. And by the way, Travis, congrats on being the top reviewer at IGN. I just want to let you know you are my favorite reviewer at IGN. I didn't have to think about that for half an hour.
Also, I don't know what top reviewer means. I have the highest volume of reviews. So that's
it means that however one might feel about IGN at any given moment, understand that the largest proportion of that feeling is actually Travis.
Is about me. Yeah, that's right.
In my opinion, Travis is my favorite.
Nice. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Like I said, remember we don't have a show next week, so take care. Find us on Twitter. We'll obviously be interacting with everyone, and look forward to Bitcast 200 on May 1st, 2 weeks from now. As always, if you're tuning in, watching us live chat, you've been awesome today, and thank you guys so much. So until then, the Bitcast, as you know, is your weekly show, or now bi-weekly. See, I set that up wrong. Your weekly show covering all things Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, and PC with industry, technical, and legal insight. Until next time.